Well, good morning, everybody. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Athletic Greens, the most comprehensive daily nutritional beverage that I have ever tried. I think of it as my nutritional insurance. There is plenty of reasons to be stressed out in life, whether it be habits. There are plenty of reasons to be stressed out in this life. Schedule, sleep, exercise, not getting enough of or the right foods. I get it. It is difficult to maintain effective nutritional habits. Enter Athletic Greens, a daily all-in-one superfood powder that is your nutritional essential. It's by far the easiest and most delicious nutritional habit that you can add to your health routine today and empower you to take ownership of your health. One tasty scoop of Athletic Greens contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients, including a multivitamin, multi-mineral, probiotic, green superfood blend, and more. That they all work together to fill the nutritional gap in your diet. They increase your energy and focus and aid with digestion and support a healthy immune system, all without the need to take multiple products. Super lifestyle friendly, whether you're keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, gluten-free, doesn't matter. Contains less than 1 gram of sugar without compromising the taste. Right now, Athletic Greens is doubling down on supporting your immune system during the winter months. They're offering the audience a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase if you visit the link today. You'll basically never have to buy vitamin D again. So whether you're looking for peak performance or better health, covering your bases with Athletic Greens makes investing in your energy, immunity, and gut health each day simple, tasty, and efficient. athleticgreens.com/clearedhot and join the health experts, athletes, and health-conscious go-getters around the world who are making a daily commitment to their health every day. athleticgreens.com/clearedhot, and you get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs today. This episode is also brought to you by Magic Spoon, a brand that I get feedback on just about every day from listeners. They don't believe me that it is so good. Oh, but it is. Cereal is one of my favorite snack foods. It always has been. And as I've gotten older, I realized there's some consequence, we shall say, to eating it. So if you're like me and you like cereal, but you don't like the carbs or sugar or the fact that it's really not a healthy food, don't worry. I have a solution for you. And it's called Magic Spoon. And they have just released a brand new variety pack, which is now featuring their peanut butter flavor. Peanut butter was a limited edition flavor in 2020, and it's sold out 3 times. It's gotten so much love that they decided to keep it permanent and add it to the bestseller variety pack, which also includes frosty, fruity, and cocoa. In that variety pack, 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving. 140 calories per serving, and it is also keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, and GMO-free. What I'm going to say is this. Don't be afraid to explore the space. Mix and match, if you will. If this sounds interesting and delicious to you, go to magicspoon.com/clearedhot and you can grab that variety pack today and try it. Be sure to use the promo code clearedhot and at checkout and you'll save $5. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it is backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they're going to refund your money. No questions asked. Remember, you can get your next delicious bowl of guilt-free cereal at magicspoon.com/clearedhot and use the promo code clearedhot to save $5 off. This episode is also brought to you by Feels. Now, if you have some stress or anxiety or perhaps chronic pain or you have trouble sleeping at least once a week, you're not alone. I have probably all of those things. Enter Feels. What is Feels, you might ask? It is premium CBD delivered directly to your doorstep. What does it do? Well, it naturally helps you reduce stress, anxiety, pain, and sleeplessness. It could not be easier. This is a sublingual CBD. You place a few drops of Feels under your tongue, and you can feel the difference within minutes. The thing to remember about CBD is that finding the correct dose is important, which is why I often recommend to people the Flight. It is 3 different doses. So leave a little bit of room to experiment over the course of a week or so. Don't expect this to be a magic recipe right away. You're going to need to dial it in for yourself. If you're new to CBD, Feels offers a free CBD hotline and text message support to help guide you and your personal experience. It works naturally to help you feel better. There's no high, hangover, or addiction. You can also, if you want, join their membership program. They have an entire community based around this, and you can get it delivered to your door every month. You'll save money on every order, and you can pause or cancel anytime. Feels definitely has me feeling my best every day, and I think it could probably help you too. You can become a member today by going to feals, feals.com/clearedhot, and you will get 50% off of your first order with free shipping. That is feals.com/clearedhot to become a member and get 50% off automatically taken off your first order with free shipping. feals.com/clearedhot. This episode is also brought to you by Duke Cannon, the makers of some incredible men's grooming products. Today, I'm going to talk about specifically their new cooling products. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but oftentimes I feel like my internal temperature rivals the temperature of the surface of the sun. And what that means is I sweat a lot. So sometimes I deal with pit stains. If you are like me and go back and watch the episode with Dan Crenshaw, and you'll see what I'm talking about, Duke Cannon has a potential solution for you, and it's their cooling antiperspirant, made for guys like me who run uncomfortably hot, moisture and friction activated, formulated with menthol to give you an all-day sensation of standing under an air conditioner cranked up to high, not a heat lamp that's stuck on boil. It is available in refreshing menthol and eucalyptus and peppermint and musk scents. The dry ice uses activated charcoal to effectively combat sweat and potential body stank. With the highest level of odor and wetness protection allowable, you'll last longer in the heat, and your shirts will too. So again, two products, the menthol and eucalyptus, peppermint and musk. Both of them have menthol to deliver instant cooling with a distinct fresh scent. They are enriched with activated charcoal to remove toxins while deodorizing. Moisture and friction activated for a cooling system to keep you cool and at the highest allowable sweat protection. I was a little hesitant when they sent these to me, but I've been wearing them for the last few weeks, and I tell you what, it actually does make you feel cooler. It took a little bit for me to get used to that sensation, but I like it. If that sounds like something you might be interested in, visit dukecannon.com and use the promo code ClearedHot2021 for 10% off your next order. Free shipping with orders over $20. dukecannon.com, promo code ClearedHot2021. That is all on the business side of the house. Let's get into this episode. My guest today for episode 171 is Nic McKinley. People had reached out to me quite a bit and said, well, you need to get some PJs on your podcast. And in my head, I was thinking, I know, you're right. But I didn't really know any. But guess what? I got another one. Boom, in your face. Nic McKinley. PJ, then decided that wasn't cool enough. Maybe I'll just go work for the CIA. Then maybe that wasn't cool enough. Maybe I'll start a company called DeliverFund that directly combats human trafficking. And I would completely murder the description of all three of those things and who Nic actually is and where he comes from. So I'm just going to let him do it himself. Episode number 171 with Nic McKinley coming at you.
Okay, I got the red smoke. Gun run, north and south, west of the smoke, Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
Yeah, given your background, I actually don't know where to begin. I like your bio.
Yeah?
It's good. It's got a lot of acronyms. I love acronyms.
Which one did you read?
The DeliverFund one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got so many things going on in my life. I got to figure out, like, where is the individual I'm talking to? Where's their point of entry?
Or reference.
Yeah, because that then completely creates the context for the conversation from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How'd you land in Whitefish? I'm assuming you live up in that area.
Yeah, so I actually live North Kalispell.
Okay.
Significantly lower taxes, same views.
North Kalispell is known as South Whitefish. It's no big deal.
Yeah. Let's face it, we could take it over. We could take over Whitefish anytime we wanted.
We could take over whatever we wanted to. But when
For
we
the most
moved up
part.
here as well, I was looking at the area codes and noticing a stark, precipitous drop-off in price and taxes.
Yeah.
So we avoided that area as if it was the plague.
Yeah, I just got up here last August. So I'm a Montana boy. Grew up in Montana.
Where?
Billings, actually, right? So
I haven't made it that far east yet.
there's really no reason to.
I've also heard that from most people from Billings.
Billings is the hottest place in the state. It is also the coldest place in the state.
Is it flat?
Yeah. By Montana standards, it's flat. Cool town, but why when you can live in the valley?
Who was I talking to? It was yesterday. They wanted to do a trip, and they were talking about, it was Billings, as if That was the only place. Like, I'm coming to Montana, I have to see Billings. So they didn't say anything up front.
Okay.
And they started talking about, I want to see the mountains and the skiing. I was like, there's more cities than Billings. And also, I've never made it that far east, but I'm pretty sure the topography is a lot different.
Yeah, really once you get east of Bozeman, you can kind of cut down every tree in a day's work.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of those ranchers are really good at long range shooting because that's what they got to do to get deer. I mean, it's just it's a completely different place. The Montana that people want to come to is essentially
it's Missoula North, or if they have
basically
a lot of cash, Bozeman West.
Yeah, Los Angeles is getting a little tough to stomach these days, I think, though.
So here's a Montana-related question for you, because what's the most polite way to describe the interaction I was having online this morning? Somebody reached out to me and said, and this is not an uncommon message that I will get, and I'll paraphrase, hey, shut the fuck up about Montana because I can't afford to live here anymore, and you're not from here, and I hate you. Now, I added a few things in there, but
sure.
The essence was, this is a secret that nobody knows about. Spoiler alert that the lid's been off of that, little case for 30 years, I think. But how much has Montana changed since you grew up? Are you seeing a crazy influx? Is it really that much different? Because my frame of reference, we've been here now about 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that there's more people in the valley, but this last year during the pandemic, I was at the DMV and they said they had put up 20 to 30,000 more pins of people, who are coming in to do the driver's licenses.
Mm-hmm.
So there's more people, but I don't have a good frame of reference for the change.
I think the change is in people's heads. Quite frankly, I left Montana when I was 18, showed back up when I was 42, didn't notice much of a change. And was constantly kind of in and out visiting family and whatnot. Now, are home prices higher?
Sure.
Yeah, of course they are. They are everywhere, right? I mean, the economy continually expands. So this economy is going to continue to expand too.
Yeah.
Also, there's these things called airlines and freaking Instagram accounts. So anybody who thinks that Montana is a secret is deluding themselves.
It wasn't a secret 30 years ago.
No, and in fact, when I got my driver's license, right, I had a 1976 Jeep CJ7, right.
That's an amazing vehicle.
99 horsepower, right. I mean, you could maybe hit 75 going downhill with a really good tailwind.
Yep.
4-speed.
Maybe hit 15 on the way up that same hill.
Maybe, but that sucker would. I mean, it would climb a tree if the bark didn't slip.
The torque on those things is amazing,
right? So I drive it down to the courthouse in Billings, and I'm getting my driver's license, like the real one, right? No
paper for you.
Yeah. What was I? I was probably 15. Could you get your learner's permit up here back in the day at 14 and a half? So
that
I think it was
feels
like 15.
very farmer ranchery to me.
Yeah, it's Montana, right? And so I go down there, and there's bumper stickers, free for the taking, that says Californians go home. Right? That was in
So this attitude has been around
1994
for a long time.
Yeah, I mean this attitude has been around in Texas since Texas became Texas, right?
Yeah.
It's the same mentality. It's why I call Montana Northern Command and Texas is Southern Command. Notice I have offices in both places.
Yep.
Right. Gotta have your
Norcom,
fallback.
SOCOM.
Yeah. So that's really the genesis of the culture in Montana. But you also notice nobody's complaining about the tax base. Nobody's complaining about the fact that I have fiber in my house. Nobody's complaining about the increase in infrastructure, and maybe someday we'll actually get flights between the cities in Montana too, right?
I mean, let's not get crazy.
Yeah.
But the Kalispell Airport is, in fact, adding a terminal wing. I think they started construction on that project, actually.
Yeah, I was talking to one of the business development leads at Glacier Bank, one of our local banks here. Those guys are amazing. I mean, it's 21st century banking with 19th century customer service. And I was talking to one of their business development leads, and he said that the flights between Dallas, the nonstops that they do in the summer between Dallas and Glacier, was one of the most successful leg rollouts that I think it's United who does that has ever seen. So, the state's going to grow. We've got plenty of resources to do that. We've got plenty of we've got obviously plenty of space to do that. And I don't see how that's a bad thing for the state. The only bad thing is when people start bringing their politics that caused them to leave the place that they're leaving, and try to come up here and like destroy that too. The difference though is the culture. The culture won't allow that.
Well, and I think there's two types of transplants. There's one that I think falls into that category. And in my limited experience and exposure, that is generally the person who is a resident of Montana for somewhere between 4 to 7 days per year, but they have a home here. So they visit and want to bring that with. But most of the people I know who have left California, to include a guy at SPG we were talking about, he just came up, a black belt named John Boone. They're leaving because they're seeking the opposite of where they were. So they're not trying to bring anything with them. They didn't like where they were. The people who like where they are staying, except for when they're a resident here for 4 to 6 days. And then you have to deal with that BS. But most of the people I'm seeing are like, hey, we didn't really like the politics. Your gun laws are kind of way more awesome than Cali. So
especially now.
Yeah.
Thank you, state legislature, the last couple of days.
That's right. They passed that constitutional carry.
That's right.
But yeah, so I there's two pots of those transplants. One pot I'm kind of worried about. The other one is welcome aboard.
Yeah, and I think the one that we're worried about, are we really worried about them? Because they're not voting here. They're not.
That's true.
In many cases, though, they are trying to fund candidates here.
Yeah, they can influence that way for sure. A little behind the curtain action, if you will.
Yeah, but I just don't see it working. I mean, look at this last election, right? I mean, the whole state went red.
Yeah.
And one of the first things the new governor did was limit the liability on businesses right around COVID.
Hence the mask mandate being lifted
roll back
2 weeks
the mask
ago.
mandate, and then constitutional carry passes. Like if that's when people ask about the culture in Montana, especially politically, did you know suppressors were completely legal and outside the NFA in Montana about, I want to say it was like 10 years ago?
No, but that also doesn't surprise me.
So the state legislature passed a rule basically saying that if you were a Montana resident and you were purchasing a suppressor that was made in Montana, that was considered intrastate commerce and therefore was outside of the regulations of the NFA, National Firearms Act. And so Elite Iron is in Bonner, Montana, right? Great suppressor company, and there were people rolling in, paying cash for suppressors and walking out the door, completely legal.
That's way better than the 6 to 8 months that I waited for mine.
Yeah. So the ATF freaked out. The federal government actually made Montana bend a knee based on road funding. And so
they got them with infrastructure.
Yeah, so they started restricting funding, and finally the state of Montana started got back in line, if you will, with the federal government. But during that period of time, we had county sheriffs that were threatening to arrest federal agents that were trying to enforce the NFA in their county. And that's actually one of the beauties of the structure of of our country and really the brilliance of our founding fathers. That, I mean, look at it this way: county sheriffs, how are they any different than warlords in Afghanistan? Right? They got a chunk of territory that they control.
They have better trucks.
Yeah, they got better trucks, right? Better weapons sometimes.
Systems,
Sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not always better weapon systems,
Yeah, but they're, for the most part, like they're the king of that territory, right?
Yeah.
They rule that territory, and what they say goes. And they're accountable to the people because they're elected politicians, unlike federal agents. And so I think we're going to see in case you haven't noticed, there's a little bit of a divide happening in our country right now. It's
hard to miss.
It's out there. Yeah. And that's probably only going to get wider. And I think what we're going to really start to see is you're going to see county sheriffs, you're going to see state legislatures, you're going to see people just say, you know what, enough is enough. And they're going to start taking their rights back at the state level. And you're going to see that on both sides. Like, I'm not trying to make a political argument here. I'm just trying to say that you're going to see that on the right. You're going to see that on the left. But really, states are going to become safe harbors for people of those political views. And I think that's really what we're looking at. And if that's what we're looking at as the future of the country, then I'm glad I'm in Montana.
The divided states of America as opposed to the united.
Yeah, well.
I don't know how that division actually... Do you think it's at a place where it could course correct and heal itself, or is that just the path that we're on? I go back and forth on this one.
I do too. I think at the end of the day, most people, especially people with kids, just want to provide a better set of circumstances for their kids.
Yeah.
I really think that's what it comes down to. So there's the part of me that says that, people will eventually do what's in their own best interest. But then there's the other part of me that truly believes that, mankind is innately evil. And as soon as you create that us's versus them's mentality, and then you pour a little bit of kerosene called dopamine hits from social media, and then the only other thing that research shows that provides more of a dopamine hit than social media is politics. Well, there you go. There's Twitter.
Yeah.
And so really people are cognitively incentivized to widen that gap as much as possible. And then all of the social media companies, right, and kind of the big tech, they're riding that all the way to the bank.
Yeah.
And so they're show me the incentive for the system that supports the people to swing towards the people with families who just want to make a better existence for their kids and go camping on the weekends, and not completely, deconstruct things.
I cannot provide that.
Yeah. So that's why I'm like, well,
yeah.
So when my wife and I, my wife is the one person who's actually from DC. So I married her and got her out of DC. You're welcome, honey.
Does she like it better here or there?
Oh, better here, 100%.
Yeah. I can understand that move because I also went bigger city to much smaller. I don't know if I could go the other direction again.
Oh, man.
I could see it being a journey or an adventure when you're younger, right? You start off small and like, boom, you're loving the big city. But I experienced many times, driving to LA from San Diego could be either 90 minutes or 900 minutes.
Right.
So
right.
I lived in Eastern San Diego and I had to get to the Silver Strand to work. And sometimes it was 2 hours, sometimes it was 25 minutes. Mm-hmm. The just population density. There's some things that I miss, the diversity of food.
Sure.
Better elsewhere, but learn to cook was the solution that I landed on. So I can source all that stuff. I couldn't go back now. I think it would actually make me, I know for a fact, it would make me extremely uncomfortable to be that compressed again around other people.
It would. And, growing up in Montana, the thing you want to do the most is get out of Montana, right? You're like, I got to get out of here, this place.
Here's the thing. Every person from Montana that I know has this magnetizing pull back at some point.
Yeah,
they leave and they're like, I must return.
Yeah, you don't realize how. It's that whole grass is greener thing, right? How many guys who went from the SOCOM SEAL teams to the JSOC SEAL teams, and were like, the grass over here is going to be plated in gold.
Yeah,
and then
damn it, it's the same lawn separated by an imaginary line.
Yeah, and you're like, wow, it's just kind of the same thing. Our lawnmowers are a little shinier and you run a little faster, but yeah, it's the same thing. I was when I was at the agency, we had a joint agency G Squadron combined little task force, if you will, right? And normally you're not getting up to 2 p.m., right? Because you were out all night.
Vampire hours.
Yeah. So the radio starts cracking off, and I'm like, whoa, man, what's going on? People are talking about like suppressors and belt feds, and I was like, are we under attack? So I go, I'm the team leader, so I go running out of my little chew, and I'm like, what's going on? And the freaking the CAG guys are doing a junk on the bunk, and I'm like, but wait a minute, you're JSOC. You don't have to do that stuff. And their sergeant major just looked at me. He's like, bro, it's still Army.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Same thing on the,
I'm a civilian technically. I'm going back to bed.
Yeah. No, same thing on the the Navy side of the house.
Yeah.
At some point, the bureaucracy of the larger Navy, you bounce up against that. So,
and maybe that's a good thing. I don't know.
I think it's actually a good checks and balance.
Yeah.
There needs to be at least a little bit of oversight outside of the community, because I can tell you from working in that community, we are our single worst enemy would grind that shit to dust.
Yeah.
Given enough time. Like, no, it's fine. We're totally responsible with this budget.
Don't worry.
Also, it's March 3rd. Can we have some more? Because we are not going to make it to October 1st.
It was just a small fire.
Yeah. I needed those shoes. 7,000 pair of those shoes. No.
Right. Yeah.
So where did you go when you left Montana?
I joined the Air Force, enlisted guy. Didn't go to college, like literally graduated high school. I had this great gig working up the Boulder River Valley. If you're familiar with that area.
I'm
not. So Google McLeod, Montana.
Okay.
Wait for the snow to melt. Take a good 4-wheel drive up there, and there's a little lake at the top. It's called I don't remember off the top of my head. Blue Lake, I think. Golden trout. You're up at about 6,000 feet, 7,000 feet, and there's an old abandoned mine up there. It's pretty awesome, right? So
I will check that out for sure.
You've seen the movie A River Runs Through It?
Who hasn't?
Okay, I was going to say, because then we'd
I
have
mean,
to...
it's Brad Pitt. Is there? I mean, in the dictionary,
right?
Beauty
and
is a picture of Brad Pitt,
and even shirtless sometimes, right? So like, I totally understand as a Navy guy, like, that's the thing
I was drawn to it.
Keyed off on.
Drawn to it, really.
So it's the river valley where that movie was filmed, right? It's absolutely beautiful.
I will check that out for sure.
Yeah. So I spent my summers up there in high school, like would literally disappear for 3 months, and just working on these guest ranches and church camps and things like that. So I wanted to do one more summer of that, and then right after the summer was over, joined the Air Force, went into the pararescue teams, and that was what got me out of Montana.
How'd you land on the Air Force? Is there a base in Billings?
No, I wanted to be it started with I wanted to be a force reconnaissance medic. No such thing, right? Because they
use Navy corpsmen, don't they?
Navy corpsmen,
the FMFs.
Yeah, so no such thing, right? So then I went over to the Navy because I clearly I'm not going to go be in the Air Force, like no. So I went over to the Navy and I was like, cool, I wanted to be a SEAL medic, and then the Air Force guy Air Force recruiter who's kind of always hanging around the Army and the Marine Corps and Navy offices waiting for people. He was like, hey, did you hear this thing called pararescue? And I was like, nah, I'm not interested, right? And then my mom actually brought home a pararescue brochure. Mike Maltz on the front of it. Guy ended up being my supervisor. And I was like, oh, this looks
Where did she get
cool.
that?
That's a great question. I actually don't know. She saw it on like one of those, like, the
like a leaflet little stand
that they've got in like, the strip mall in Billings or something like that, right? Probably the one person that ever joined the Air Force based on the millions of dollars worth of pamphlets that they did, right? So I checked it out and I went back to the recruiter. I was like, hey, what's this? And he was like, that's what I was trying to tell you about, man. I have this thing about not really listening at first.
Pointer for the recruiter, have some of those available to give to people.
Yeah.
Come on, people.
Yeah. So then he shows me the video, right? You got to have the cool recruiting video. Yep. And the recruiting video was awesome. And I was like, and the thing was the Navy couldn't guarantee me that I could be a medic, right? It was like, well, maybe, but.
Or a SEAL contract, probably.
But maybe not. Yeah. And that wasn't a guarantee, but that also wasn't a guarantee in the Air Force, right? But I was confident enough, arrogant to think that, it's like, well, you got a 80, or 92% chance of not making it. And I was like, no, other people have a 92% chance of not making it, but I'm going to make it. And it was like, no, you got to pick another job. And I was like, why?
Did you not just hear what I said?
Yeah, like
this career field actually needs me.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, how it is. So I was like, yeah, no, this is what I'm doing. And my dad was there, and my dad was like, Nick, like, pick another job, in case you don't make it. And I was like, fine, I'll do whatever. Like, what do you got available? And he's like, mechanic. I was like, fine, I'll do that. And my dad was just like, face in his hand, just like, well, pain is the best way to learn, I guess. And so no guaranteed pararescue contract really wasn't such a thing back then. But
is it now?
I believe it is. My PJ knowledge is a bit dated, right? I got out in 2007, so it's a bit dated, but I believe that now you actually can go straight into pararescue, and the system is completely different, right? I mean, there's now this like Air Force special warfare thing, and it used to be just pararescue and combat control selected together, and really those were the only two soft career fields when I went in. Guys were failing out and then going to other career fields that are now part of the Air Force special warfare system. So like, I don't know a whole lot of how that system works now, but back then it was like, no, man, like you got to pick something else. I mean, I think this is how the Air Force like filled all the like cop and cook roles, right? Was just sign everybody up for pararescue, and then
that used to be how the Buds pipeline was.
Yeah,
it was. You could go there originally. You could go there as an undesignated seaman.
Ooh, that sounds dangerous.
Well, if you didn't make it, you were going to get issued a paint hammer or a chipping just bah, and you were going to be
chipping rust off the side of a ship,
or painting an aircraft carrier from starboard side to port. And then when you get to the front again, it's like, you know what, just
keep going.
But imagine, if that was
man.
The number of people, or probably disciplinary problems that came out of that.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to choose also. So I chose radar scope operator because it was the shortest one. Now it's a full pipeline. That's why I was curious. I'm sure the PJ one is probably similar. You get contracts, pre-training, post-training from the pre-training, but is still pre-training for the training.
Right.
Yeah, it's a full foot to the floor system at this point.
Yeah, I think the whole soft community has just come so far.
Yeah.
The longest war in the history of the country will kind of tend to have that as a second order effect. But the whole soft community has just come such a long ways. I mean, the training that they're getting now, at the infantry level is arguably better than some of the training I was getting, as a PJ.
That's what I was going to say. I bet you the standard infantry training right now exceeds or matches special operations training 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at and just look at combat experience, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we had like 2 dudes in my unit who had combat experience, and it was a minimal experience compared to what guys have today, right? You get guys who spent 20 years at CAG, and yet some E3 who was in Fallujah on his only combat tour saw more combat than somebody who did 20 years at a JSOC unit. I mean, it's just the way that the cards fell.
The pendulum of time.
Yeah, but the good part of that is that the soft community now. I mean, everything down to the uniforms are better. I mean, we used to have to make our own kit. Right, we had to freaking sew our own uniforms. I mean, it was.
I can work a sewing machine though.
Oh yeah. Like
I would get issued stuff. This pocket is unacceptable. I'm going to move this 4 centimeters.
Absolutely. I mean, back in the day, it was you could get Blackhawk.
Yep.
And Eagle.
Yeah.
I think those were the 2 companies, right? And that was about it. You had the holsters with the little snap.
Oh,
remember those?
I know exactly
the Eagle
what you're talking
holsters.
about.
Yeah. And I mean, good gosh, they got cool toys now.
They have amazing toys now. My only hope is that they don't come to rely on the toys and that basic level of soldiering still exists, which I'm sure it will, but I just don't want it reduced to a video game, I guess I would say.
Yeah. Well, social media is not helping us out there.
No.
Did you see that latest video on the, I think it was a bunch of Army Joes doing CQB?
Where they were running in front of everybody's muzzle?
Yeah, live fire.
Yeah, I can only tolerate so much of that because I assume the video is going to terminate in a catastrophic accident, and I have a really hard time watching those.
So I'm not so I'm on social media, but I'm not really on social media. My social media is more of a leaves on the professional branch, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'm not really personally a social media guy, and but I always know when I'm getting text messages of Instagram links from buddies that like it's going to be good, and most likely somebody doesn't end with their head getting canoed. So,
so you got into the PJ pipeline pre 9/11. But imagine
96.
So 96. So you had a good amount of time, call it half your career pre 9/11 and then half post.
Yeah. So it was 2-year pipeline. So
it's robust. And that's one thing, like I was telling you, I had Will on a few weeks ago, but his episode comes out next Monday, or actually when this comes out, it'll be the Monday before you.
Right.
People are like, you need more PJs. I'm like, what's up? 2 back-to-back. Suck
Gonna
it.
get 2 of them.
Yeah, suck it. And guess what? They all know each other because apparently there's only 6 PJs.
Yeah.
But
there's actually 8 of us.
Yeah. Well, he was in your wedding. We both know Joe. So it's like one
Yeah,
degree of
there you
separation. The training pipeline is crazy.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. He broke it down a little bit. I just love the skill sets and the combining of all that, and basically the crafting of a multi-tool that then goes out and can execute that on the battlefield. And I always tell people, if you ever have hydraulic fluid leaking on the battlefield, you want a PJ on you fast.
For sure.
We had them when I was at the JSOC command out east, and they were amazing. I mean, hey, I'm leaking, and you're like, boom, okay, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm not fine, but I'm definitely going to live till I can get a higher level of care.
And that's really, I think, what everybody needs to understand. I get these calls a lot, and I'm sure you do. Buddies, sons want to join special ops. They really want to talk to you about being a SEAL or a PJ or whatever. And I always back them up a little. I'm like, tell me about the story playing in your head. Because if the story in your head is you're sitting behind a long gun on some hilltop somewhere, in a 3-day hide site, bro, PJ's not for you. You might be there, but you're not going to be on the gun. Yeah, that's not your job, man. Right?
You might physically be present, but you're probably not applying slow, even back pressure to that trigger.
Correct. Unless, of course, you're on a range and the snipers are just giving you some cross training.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's the deal. If the story in your head is, you're covered in blood and like you're really praying that you're going to be able to save this person who's like laying on the ground and that if you don't, everyone's going to blame you for them dying, regardless of whether or not, it was your fault. That if you do a good job, people are going to be like, hey, you did your job. And then you're going to get to go through that stress all over again. The thing about being in pararescue is, lots of times you're chopped off. You're chopped off to a SEAL team or an ODA or a freaking wherever, right? There were times I was even chopped off to like federal law enforcement agencies. I mean, it's
really,
yeah. And so you're constantly busy. There's always a mission for a PJ. That's the cool thing. But you get attached to a SEAL team. Awesome. Guess what? You're the Air Force guy. And
back of the train, bitch.
Yeah, and it's a 90-day deployment, and by about day 89 and like 7 hours, guys are like, hey, Air Force, you're all right.
Come on up here.
Yeah, and then you're like, okay, and so you gotta work harder. You gotta basically prove yourself to a bunch of people, right? Just like you did when you were a new guy on a SEAL team. Well, guess what? You're the new guy every 90 days.
That's a rough cycle to be perpetually in.
Well, is it a limitation or is it a motivation? I would
take it as a ladder.
I always looked at it as a motivation, like cool, like. But the really good thing about that is, one, you have a constant motivation to like be on the top of your game, or at least try to be on the top of your game. But two, you get to learn so much when you're with an ODA for 3 months, and then you're working with FBI HRT for a little while, and then you're in a training cycle on your team, and now you're going to go work with a SEAL team. I mean, you get exposed to that many high performers. Who are all at the top of their game and all have various experiences. If you're just paying attention, you will learn so much from the environments that you get stuck in. And that's actually one of the things that I really liked, kind of perpetually having ADD. I need to constantly be stimulated with new things to learn. And being a PJ just kind of allowed that.
How much did the medical training that you were receiving change post 9/11? Because it was insane, the stuff we did pre 9/11. Our medical, an 18-month workup for a 6-month pre 9/11 deployment, which it consisted of drinking and lifting.
Yeah.
And then also drinking. You could do drinking in the morning, lifting, drinking. So you could play around with the ratio.
Well, it's all about the three ratios of, how much sleep do you need to survive? Not perform, survive, right? Like at what point... At what point does it start becoming not detrimental to your health, because you're way beyond that?
Oh, for sure.
Detrimental
the booze alone takes you outside
to your
of your
existence, right? and then it becomes, how little sleep do you need? How much can you drink while still being able to perform at PT the next morning? Right? Really, I mean, that's the way you're making calculations in your life at that age.
At all times.
Yeah. And as long as you can do it, if you reek of alcohol, that doesn't matter. I mean, that might even get you a little more respect with your team, right? It's whether or not you're throwing up on the run.
Yeah,
right.
That's correct.
So it's that modulation there that's really important. So, and then you obviously got to make sure that you don't end up in a roll of duct tape because you blacked out.
That is correct. You have to hedge yourself against that at all times, because somebody is going to end up in that roll of duct tape.
100%.
Yeah, just don't be that guy. You want to be on the delivering end, not the receiving end of it.
Yeah, those Miller boards don't tape people to them themselves.
We, hypothetically.
Allegedly.
Yeah, there was a time at Team 5 where people would get taped to those plastic spine boards and then vertically placed in the grill of a vehicle that would then be paraded down the beach at a high rate of speed.
Oh, what could go wrong?
Oh, fuck.
How did we survive this stuff? Like real
pure luck,
divine intervention. It's got to be, because had literally not the hand of God been like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and put you guys in a bubble.
Yeah.
How would we have survived?
I have no explanation for it, but yeah, I look back at the pre 9/11. I think we did a week of medical training in that 18 months leading up, and I remember like splinting, IV training with generally 18 or 20 gauges. Thankfully, I'm not a fan of IV training with 14s because those look like a straw to me.
Yeah.
And they feel like a straw also. And maybe some pressure dressing. I remember them basically, saying a tourniquet's probably not a good idea.
Yeah. Remember those days? What tourniquet is the tool of last
maximum
resort.
of 1 hour with a tourniquet. Yeah. Fast forward, I mean, that was 96, 97, 98 and those workups. Fast forward 4 or 5 years and multiple tourniquets. I think they eventually, what was the name of the stuff that you would pour? It was a powder that you would...
Quick clot?
Yeah, so they went away from that because it was burning. It would burn everything that was liquid, right?
But there's new Quick Clot that you can use. But
the advancements between...
Oh, it's insane.
That and then live tissue trading in the kill house in the middle of evolution, slinging a gun and diving into medical problems, whether it be a point blank range shotgun M4 round, or even a guy with like an arrow. Like, holy shit, why are we taking down targets where people have axes? Like, I don't want to be a part of this. Like, what's
Well, what's interesting is in pararescue, I mean, we were doing that in the 90s. So live tissue training, all that. There was a...
And that's awesome that you were, because I don't think that had spread out very far.
It's kind of our job.
That's accurate.
So
that's accurate.
Yeah. So we were kind of into the whole medical thing, but I look back on it now, and it's I mean, it was a little on the dumb side because I mean, so I remember being a new guy. I show up to my team, and they did an external jugular stick on me. Right.
On you.
Yeah, on me.
I'm going to take a hard pass on that.
Yeah. Well, that's. Welcome to being a new guy. Like there's the hazing at the PJ teams is a little bit different because it's really hard to practice medical stuff on, Mr. Hertz dummies.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot easier to practice that stuff on new guys. And so that's your hazing at a PJ team back in the day.
I feel like that probably still exists.
Yeah, it probably does. Right. Yeah. But next thing I know, I've got, a flight surgeon sitting there, basically watching an E4, because I'm an E3, stick a needle in my jugular, and I watch him turn white because he missed. And like, these are the kinds of things that like anesthesiologists do, right? So that,
I mean, an E4, let's be honest, is basically
the same thing. Yeah, I mean, he did go through 2 years of PJ training, right? Of which a good 6 months was medical. So same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet you, again, going back to the baseline training now, I would imagine that as long as there is budget for it, live tissue training, I would hope, is force-wide for anybody who's boots on the ground.
I mean, I believe it is.
And look at that advancement. Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
In 20 years. And the difference in life-saving ability that makes, it completely changed everything from where to have tourniquets, you know. Hey, maybe you should be able to put it on yourself. That's something that wasn't discussed either.
Right. Yeah, the whole like self-rescue, self-aid,
self-aid,
buddy care. I mean, it just wasn't really a thing. And one of the things that we always realized as a PJ was like when you had some ODA sergeant major who, like, you're number 3 in the stack and he pulls you to the back and you're like, oh, and you're all mad. But then you realize, like, if something happens to me, like, I'm done. There's nobody coming for me. So, okay, maybe that was a good leadership decision. And that's really where now you've got PJs are giving like blood transfusions on target.
That's insane to me.
Yeah. There was this whole concept of the buddy transfusion that
you mean live person to live person.
Yeah. It's not like you're hooking up a line from like one person to another, but where you're literally taking blood from one human, like on target, and putting it in another human on target. There was this like high level academic concept that was happening at like the surgeon of SOCOM level, but that's like becoming mainstream within the SOCOM community. And so when you look at the direction that the war has brought us, I mean, if we're thankful for anything on these wars, it's the fact that some of the best warriors on the face of the earth have been produced over the last 20 years.
Hands down.
I mean, it's incredible, and you can't. But what amazes me is, I mean, look at the firearms training that's available today. I mean, when I was a young PJ, it was like you went to Thunder Ranch, Gun Sight,
maybe Mid-South.
Mid-South was one, and there was that other Rogers, I think it was.
Sure.
Yeah, those were the big 4. There was nothing else to do. Now, I mean, you can't throw a rock without hitting somebody who's a guy.
Tier 1, a guy who's running a shooting course, for sure.
Yeah, and so same thing on the medical side, same thing on, I mean, everything. And I mean, in the 90s, I don't know about you guys, but we interacted a lot with LAPD SWAT because they were the only ones actually doing things for real.
We did not, actually.
Oh, yeah, we interacted with them quite a bit, FBI HRT, because they were the only ones like getting in real gunfights. And they were only getting in gunfights maybe once or twice a year,
which was a magnitude of order greater than anybody else in the
anything
military.
we were doing. Yeah. And so we were going to them, right? And a lot of our stuff kind of, you almost start looking like a little mini SWAT team. Well, now fast forward to where we are now, and now go look at all those SWAT teams. They all look like a bunch of tier 1 units, rolling around overseas
in MRAPs.
In this country. Hey, didn't we fight a war to keep MRAPs off the streets in this country? I just thought.
I think so. Yeah, that's a rabbit hole that we could go down for hours.
Oh yeah.
Why'd you decide to transition out of the PJ pipeline?
Yeah, so really, every soft person knows that you get to that point where you realize that thing that's behind the curtain is an elephant, and you got to choose whether or not you're going to accept that or you're going to move on.
I always describe it as a donkey with a fly buzzing around its head.
There's that. And so I'd made E7. I was right at the I was at the 11-year mark, and I was on the E7 list. I couldn't sew it on yet because I hadn't been in long enough. And what am I looking at there? Well, my future is probably on one of these, right? I'm going to do less and less running with the teams, and so really at that point, I felt like I kind of became a victim of my own success to a certain extent, and wanted to go try something different. So my PJ trajectory was, all right, you're, obviously you're a free fall guy. Let's go be a jump master, and then let's go be a freaking tandem guy and the bundle guy, and then
an AFF guy, and
yeah,
then you're out of schools.
Right. And then it was, all right, well, was I truly passionate about the medicine piece? Because there are some PJs who they live, eat, and breathe this stuff. I mean, they just are really passionate about the medicine piece. And I wasn't one of those guys. I liked it, but I wasn't truly passionate about the medicine piece. And my PJ team coming out of 38, there was a group of us that were already slotted to deploy to Operation Northern Watch, right? People forget about Northern Watch and Southern Watch and was it Desert Fox and the Olive Branch missions and all that stuff that was going on around Iraq all in the 90s. And we were we were neck deep in all of it. There wasn't probably a country except for Syria in Iran, where you didn't have a PJ around Iraq supporting basically air operations and things that were going on in and out of Iraq, right? So PJs and combat controllers are all over the place. So my team was already slotted to go do a Northern Watch rotation into southern Turkey, right? And then it was like, oh yeah, by the way, September 11th happened, so we're just going to go ahead and have you guys stay put. And we started running these operations in and out of northern Iraq. I was, well, why are we going in and out of northern Iraq? Well, because we're going to attack them in a couple of years. I mean, that's basically what it came down to. And so we kept working with these agency dudes, and I was like, it seems like a pretty cool mission. Some of them were.
I've had hit or miss experiences
there
as
you
well.
Go. I
know I struggle with that as well too. And don't get me wrong, I don't know a lot about the agency or a lot of guys there, but when it comes to specifically like case officers, or I forget what they were called, country, whatever it might be, but hit or miss.
Hit or miss is a good way to put it. Some of the finest people I've ever worked with at the agency were, obviously CIA officers. Most of those were former soft guys.
Yeah.
It's really, right? So very, very interesting. Different mission. And it's unfair to the CIA to impose the same mission the same standard that we impose on the SOCOM and JSOC communities, right?
It is a 100% different mission, for sure.
However, there are subsets where it's kind of the same mission, but you don't know that, right? I mean, especially kind of pre-September 11th, and then just right after September 11th, nobody really knows what's going on, and when you're in the soft community, you kind of think that there's got to be a red door of competence somewhere, because surely this can be it, right? And so you're always looking for that red door, and so I thought, well, it must be at the agency, and so I really was at a fork in the road. It was, am I gonna kind of go down the JSOC road? Am I gonna go the agency road? Am I gonna just get out all together and go civilian? What am I gonna do here? And I just decided that the agency thing looked pretty good. But how did you apply to the agency? Right? I mean, I didn't know how to do that. Nobody really did. So I actually ended up kind of falling backwards into a private personnel recovery startup, doing a lot of private personnel recovery for Fortune 25 companies. Really cool.
So you got out?
Yeah. So I just bailed, but I stayed in the reserves. Okay. And then I was part of an operation that got the first 21 people out of Lebanon at the end of 2006. Hezbollah and the Israelis decided to have their little party in Tarnak Farms area. Yeah. A bunch of Americans got stuck because the Israelis bombed the Beirut airport. So basically tore up the runway, so the planes couldn't come in and out, and then established a naval blockade. So there were a couple of very large recognizable companies who had engineers that were stuck in Lebanon, and the system is so broken that there was nobody to call. So here, this 27-year-old PJ, I get a call from the CEO of the company who had heard from a friend of a friend that I was thinking about getting out, and essentially hired me to. The way he sold it was basically be a private PJ. It ended up being very different than that, but that's the way that he sold it. So I went and did that, and then I got an email actually asking if I'd be interested in looking at a government program, and it was very
Was
very
it from
cryptic.
Jason Bourne at CIA.com?
No, it was
Fuck.
sorry. It was from a Mr. Bond.
Yeah,
right?
it was sweet.
Yeah,
Bond, J.
same guy. Yeah. So it turns out it's his dad. So I get this really interesting email, and I'm, spam mail wasn't really a thing back then, right? So I was like, okay, like this seems interesting. And what it was a covert action program being run on out of an airport in a country overseas, to narrow it down for everybody. And it was, are you interested in doing this? I'm like, heck yeah, I'm interested in doing this. Like, this just seems, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Right. It was very cool. I was on a team of, there was a couple of former Force Recon guys, like 4 or 5 SEALs, a couple of former Scout snipers, the only Air Force guy, but that's just kind of the trajectory of my entire career, and did that operation for a little while. Obama got elected. The day after he got elected, that whole covert action program was shut down. Like, I've never seen the U.S. government move with such haste.
Sounds like a little bit of a guillotine stroke there.
Yeah, it definitely. It was, literally people coming in, taking apart helicopters, putting them in boxes, and getting the heck out. And that little airport went from a pretty busy place to a ghost town overnight. And so then it was like, okay, well, now what? Like, hey, remember me, first deployment, and you just hired me to do this? Like, now what? And then it was, I was like, oh, well, we got this other thing, same office, different mission. What do you say? And so I started doing that, and yeah.
So did the agency basically hire you as a contractor? Because there's a couple ways, right? You can go in and you can, and again, this is where I'm reaching the depth of my knowledge already. I know that, like, case officers are not contractors, is my understanding, right? They have a whole selection they can be.
Yeah.
But like the selection process, the farm, the traditional stuff that you hear about, and then, and I'll leave all the other acronyms out because I don't know where the sensitivities begin, but there's a lot of contract organizations that support and work with seamlessly.
So the way I explain this to people is, it is and this isn't anything classified. It's on the CIA's website, right? Their job is to be the hidden hand of the government. So it doesn't take a lot of imagination to understand that they probably have ways of being the hidden hand of the government, right? So what does that mean? How do you move money? How do you maybe pay people without paying them directly, right? There's lots of ways in that. There's this thing called the Publication Review Board, which you are subject to based on your national security non-disclosure agreement for life, primarily for the IC and JSOC, which is essentially a big intelligence agency at this point.
Yeah. And they're also intimately tied together.
So intertwined.
Yeah.
So intertwined. Half the time you're like, wait a minute, you are military on loan to the CIA on loan back to the military.
Don't
like,
worry
what?
about the badges today.
Right. It's like basically it's just like, what title authority are we playing today?
Correct.
Right? Is it a Title 20 day? Is it a
Title 50? What do we got going on here? Title 10? Yeah.
So anyway, that's so the agency has ways of doing that. So the Publication Review Board has told me what I can say. There are plenty of other people who have spoken about some of the ways that the agency works, perhaps in regards to contractors. I don't know whether or not they have been authorized to, or they've just decided, screw it, I'm going to do it anyway. What I know is what the rules I've been given, and I'm trying, even though I think a lot of them are pretty dumb, trying to live by that. And so what I'm allowed to say is that I was a special agent that was part of a full spectrum intelligence operations unit, that specialized in working in austere environments. And there's a number of different ways that the agency does that. The one thing I can say is that the agency is a great place to work. Anybody who thinks that the CIA is involved in some big grand conspiracy theory has never worked there, because it's a government agency.
Hence the donkey with the fly buzzing around its head.
Right. Now that donkey at the agency in many cases has a better haircut, but it's still a donkey.
Of course. And maybe a higher class of fly.
Yeah, exactly. But it's still a donkey. But the CIA is an incredibly nimble organization, incredibly nimble organization. And that was one of the things that I really liked about it. So I decided, hey, I'm going to go throw my chips over in this basket and just kind of see what happens. And I also thought, being somebody with a special operations background and a CIA background would probably lead to a pretty broad skill set that would serve me later in life. And so that's kind of why I decided to jump out of pararescue and go to the agency.
It's definitely not going to hurt when the resumes get circulated. It's going to grab some attention, as it should.
It does. It's a different choice. That's one of the things I like to tell people. It's just a different choice. If somebody spent their entire career in SOCOM units, or did a little bit in SOCOM and then spent their entire career in JSOC, or went to the CIA, it doesn't make them better or worse than anybody else. It just means that they just made a different choice. Now they're going to get different skill sets out of those choices, but those skill sets are not necessarily more useful depending on what it is that you need them to do.
When you left, did they individually outbrief you on, what'd you call it, the PRB?
Yeah, Publication Review Board. No, it's not that squared away.
I was going to say probably some NDAs.
Six-week process that took 6 months.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was interesting. Actually got to bring my parents to agency headquarters.
Really?
Which is cool. Yeah. Yeah. Agency headquarters does have, they do allow visitors. There's a museum. Right?
They shoot movies there.
Yeah. All stuff that you can see online. Like, it's not, I love it when people are like, yeah, I'm doing some work for the CIA. I can't really talk about it. And I'm like, you're a fraud.
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
Because anybody, and you've got listeners, so I'll tell the listeners, anybody who says that they worked at the CIA can prove it.
Yeah.
Anybody who says that they worked at the CIA and can't prove it either is not keeping their word to the CIA, right? So they're breaking their non-disclosure agreements. And if somebody is breaking a national security non-disclosure agreement, what does their word mean to you, right? That's basically the way that I looked at it. And then two, anybody who makes it seem like it's this super secret, like everything is squared away,
Jason Bourne shit.
Yeah, is full of it, because at the end of the day, you've just got a bunch of people who are doing their absolute best to protect the country in the mission that they've been assigned, and they're good at it, right? Where our country is arguably the best in the world at fighting terrorism. Planes aren't crashing into buildings for lack of trying on the part of the bad guys, right? It's just that we're better. Eventually, they'll get a win. Right? They only got to get one win, even if we get 99. Yeah. But the CIA is full of good people. The FBI is full of good people. I mean, I'd even go so far as to say the ATF is mostly full of good people.
There's some good people.
Some good people.
I know some people at the ATF. I'm just joking. I like you guys.
Kind of.
You don't have to put my suppressor application in the shredder. We love you, ATF.
It's a brace.
Yeah. Did you have a college degree when you transitioned over to the agency? Because I've heard that's a stumbling block for some people, depending on the path they go.
No, I did not. I actually finished my degree the first year I was at the agency.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I finished my first degree when I started at the agency, basically on deployment, because I mean, if anyone's going to have a really kicking internet connection, it's going to be the CIA, right?
This is accurate.
Because those Netflix, they don't download themselves, right? I mean, you gotta be able to handle the movie download at volume or at scale. For sure.
In addition to the operational things, but those are secondary, of course.
Yeah, that's right. Those things. So I finished my degree while I was in the agency. You do not have to have a degree to work at the CIA. There are some jobs where a degree is mandatory, but they usually are because like they need a physician assistant, and if you don't have that little card that says physician assistant, you're not going to get that job.
And that's true at almost every organization.
Right.
You're going to hit a glass ceiling depending on what it is that you want to do.
Right. And so if you want to go to the CIA, or you're working at the CIA, maybe in a allegedly a contract role, and you want to go to a staff role, the question is, who are you competing with? And I get asked about degrees all the time. I've got 2 companies. You don't have to have a degree to work for any of them. But at the same time, when that resume stack comes in, that's who you're competing against. And so if somebody has a degree and you don't, okay, well, that's fine. What else do you have to make up for that lack of qualification? And if you don't have anything else, well, good dude doesn't put money in the bank. And so the person with the degree is probably going to get it. And when you look at the CIA, what's interesting about the CIA is, the CIA is a 1% acceptance rate by their own public admission, right?
Wow.
That's what they get. Now, is it really, is the attrition rate really that high? I mean, I have no idea. They're looking for a certain type of person. What type of person they're looking for, I've never gotten to see those shiny rocks. I wasn't allowed. But that's actually one of the CIA's most closely held secrets.
Really?
Yeah.
What it is they're actually recruiting for.
Yeah. Yeah. And then not only that, but how that process works. Because obviously if you knew the process, and you knew what they were looking for from a psych perspective and all that, then it'd be pretty easy for foreign countries to infiltrate spies into the organization. So, it's like somebody getting turned down for a JSOC unit, right? I mean, for the most part, the SOCOM units are a meritocracy, right? Either you did or you did not do the drown proofing. Either you did or you did not put the freaking softener lime in the right freaking container, right? I mean, it's pretty binary.
Yeah.
But then you get to like the JSOC level, and then you got all the boards and the psych stuff and all that, and I know some really good dudes who got passed up for JSOC units.
Yeah.
So
As do I.
Yeah, and at that point, and nobody was like, oh, well, you're now a dirtbag because you didn't make it to this JSOC unit. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess, the more mature operators realize that it's just not the person that they're looking for. It's the same thing at the CIA, right? They're looking for a very specific person. They got a lot of data going back 50 years. They got a very small mission set, right? I mean, the CIA does not have aircraft carriers, so they're not hiring. Maybe they do. I don't know. But they're looking for a very specific person, and of the people that they're looking for, or the people that they allow to fill a slot, right? They know it takes 100 to make one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the reality of the agency.
Could you have stayed there and made a career of it if you wanted to, or was?
So could I have? Absolutely.
I mean, obviously you didn't, because we're sitting here today, but
yeah, would my bureaucracy tolerance have allowed it? That's another question.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I just don't know that if I'm going to be riding a desk, I want to be doing it for somebody else.
It's fair enough.
It's really what it comes down to. What
was the point you reached when you decided to leave? Were you already looking at something on the horizon, or you reached that bureaucracy tolerance point?
So, oh man, it was a confluence of so many different things, right? Have you heard that in the special ops and in the operational intelligence community, there's a bit of a divorce rate?
I have heard that.
Yeah. It turns out the rumor is true. So my unit at the agency had an 86% divorce rate, but again, that's other people. That's not this guy. It turns out it was this guy. Got home from Afghanistan. I'm not saying I was in Afghanistan with the CIA. I'm just saying I got home from Afghanistan, right?
Maybe you were passing through.
Maybe.
It is a hub for some airlines.
So got home from Afghanistan to find my accounts cleared out.
One of those.
But does that make me unique in my community in any way, shape, or form?
I know a guy who every stitch of furniture was gone, the ice trays out of the freezer, and everything to include not only the shower curtain, the shower curtain rings.
Ah, yeah. So
empty.
So mine was, I got home, and because I had not responded to a court order, because I was in Afghanistan and I didn't get it, I actually had my entire house taken away from me, literally everything.
Shit.
Yeah, all signed over to my now ex.
Because you didn't respond, so therefore the court probably awarded it in its totality.
Thank you, New Mexico law. It's awesome. So I, was going through that, and so I was kind of on a career rocket ship, personal sinking submarine, you know the type.
Yep.
Again, I'm not unique in this. I might be unique in this way in the totality of civilization, but within our community,
Not in the cohort. Yeah.
no, not even close. I'm one of the
I'm one of the many.
Yeah. So I just kind of hit a crossroad where it's like, okay, I can continue to do the career rocket ship, but is that really what I want to do? And I started looking around at the people who I really admired as warriors. I mean, we have phenomenal warriors in this country, and when compared to those warriors, I looked at it and I'm like, okay, am I like them, right? Could I be a Billy Waugh? Probably not. I mean, I'm a solid B player. I can get to the B plus
I go C
level.
minus.
C,
but I like to come in short a little bit, so I'll give myself a C minus.
So I was like, am I going to? Do I want to be these people?
Yeah.
And then long term, is it truly what I want? Is it truly what I'm feeling called to do? Is that what I'm spending my time reading about? And so there was just this confluence of events that all kind of came together that said, I'm going to go try my hand and do something different. And I'd really been researching the human trafficking issue for about a 7-year period.
What got you onto that topic?
Oh man! So doing the private personnel recovery stuff, ended up with a U.S. citizen who had been abducted in Cabo San Lucas. A 20-year-old woman on her honeymoon, and just went to the vending machine and gone. Right. Dad was worth a lot of money, so he could afford the company that we were working for. They had a policy through Lloyd's. Nick gets call. Started working with the bureau on that one, and the guy was like, "Oh man, I bet she's been trafficked." And I was like, "No," because I went through that computer-based human trafficking training that the military makes us go through. So I'm an expert on this stuff. And
I saw 6 PowerPoint slides on this.
Yeah. And that is a bunch of Asian kids in shipping containers, right? Like, that's what that is. So like, clearly Mr. FBI agent who specializes in this stuff, you're wrong. Yeah. And so he started educating me on what the human trafficking thing was, and I'm like, man, that's really sad, right? And one thing you are raised in as a culture, as a PJ, is that whole that others may live motto, like that is ground into you. And you look at what PJs do. I mean, it all makes sense, and so that's still who you are. And I call it being raised in pararescue, because my parents raised me as a child. It basically kept me alive until they could hand me off to somebody else and leave that responsibility to them. But I was truly raised, right? And like who I am today within pararescue. I'm sure you were the same way as a SEAL.
I'm thinking what you're describing. I mean, my parents had an amazing influence. Yeah. I would describe it as they calibrated my compass. Yeah. But it was really refined around the generation of SEALs that shepherded and mentored me and made me less of a danger to myself and others. Yeah. That was really the refinement of, I would say, of my entire 20s was that community, which really shaped who I am today for sure.
Absolutely. And so being raised in pararescue and then leaving pararescue, and you hear that there's some poor woman got trafficked, it's like, well, then we're going to get her, right? I mean, and I ultimately ended up getting myself in trouble with the CEO of the company because I was just hemorrhaging company money trying to find this girl whose dad's insurance policy was running out. That's a tough situation to be in, which is actually one of the biggest reasons that I left that world. You are incentivized in that world to do what's and actually compensated based on how much money you save the insurance company, not based on mission outcome.
That is completely the opposite of what I think it should be.
Absolutely. It's a complete antithesis to my mindset. Yeah. And so is it right? Is it wrong? I'm not the judge of that. I'm just saying it's not the right place for me. So then I end up at the agency, and you can't do that work, right? In JSOC or the CIA, all of it is counter narcotics or counterterrorism related. All of it. You can't do that work and not be bumping into human trafficking, right? I mean, those slums in Rawalpindi, those kids that are in the medians begging, right? I mean, we all know how they get there, and we all know kind of how that works. And I always thought that, again, there's a red door of competence somewhere, and like somebody's got the ball on this issue, because as a country, I mean, we can kill people with flying robots from 6,000 miles away. Surely we're doing something about this human trafficking issue. You know a ton of operators. You ever known any of them who've gone on a human trafficking mission?
Zero.
Exactly. So I started asking around and could not find the agency that was dealing with human trafficking. And fast forward, I'm in Lashkar Gah. There's a lot that happens in Lashkar Gah in my life, actually, on that deployment, by the way. Maybe it's just because it was Helmand province, and so I was maybe paying a little more attention than I normally would.
Helmand will do that to you.
Yeah, Helmand's a sporty place.
It's a pinball machine of sorts.
Yeah, that's a way to look at it. You know, you spend a lot of time sleeping on walls with like magazines stacked, just waiting to rack that action back and start letting it fly over the wall. Yep. So yeah, in Lashkar Gah, working with this JSOC case officer type, and you get basically smoking gun intel on a guy who's trafficking children from Pakistan into Afghanistan to, and he's selling them off for any number of reasons, and we know some of them. But one of the people that he was selling them off to, and the reason it was relevant to what we were doing, was he was selling them off to a bomb maker who was using them to test homemade pressure plates. Right. And so what?
And by that you mean literally step on them to see whether or not they went off, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Because he wanted to create pressure plates that would go off when, man-sized U.S. soldiers stood on them, but not when children stood on them. Not because he cared about the children. It was because
he wanted to kill the soldiers.
He didn't want to waste the bomb.
Yeah.
And so, and we had video of this, and that was just like, what the? So we have all this stuff, and I remember this JSOC case officer was just typing until 2 a.m, gets that report done. Where do you send it? Show me the presidential reporting requirement for human trafficking. Doesn't exist. And I was like, I can do something about this. I mean, human trafficking is just another target set. We're darn good at target sets these days. So why not just, put a crew together and go figure this out? And it was something I was going to kind of do off the side of my desk, right? It was going to be super easy to raise money for this. Just ask me.
Raising money is
so easy.
Piece of cake.
Yeah. It was going to be easy to raise money for this. It was going to be, why has this not been done? I started asking around, started talking to people. I talked to every single person I knew who'd carried a gun in anger, law enforcement, military. You ever do anything about human trafficking? Nope. Right? Now, I didn't know any human trafficking detectives, and there kind of wasn't as much of a thing back then. But I knew lots of narcs guys, gangs guys, right? I mean, lots of soft dudes who then transitioned over to law enforcement. Mm-hmm. Nobody do anything about human trafficking.
Why is that? Because if they're in that world, law enforcement specifically, I'd have to say, especially here in the U.S., they have to be bouncing up against that kind of all the time.
They are all the time. A lot of times they don't know it.
They didn't want to do something about it, or I guess they never did.
Show me the budget line item that funds their ability to do something about it.
Fuck, it sucks that everything comes back to that in
That's
many
what it
ways.
comes down to, right? I mean, we have a great sheriff here in Flathead County, and I mean, at the end of the day, he's making decisions based on what is funded and what is not. I mean, ultimately, that is what it comes down to. And now I've had to figure that out over the last 7 years, but before that, I was like, this is going to be easy. We're just going to do this, and I'm going to keep doing the agency thing, and I'm just going to go. Help out where I can. So
a little moonlighting.
Yeah. So I actually applied to be a volunteer to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I got laughed out of the room. There's this whole executive order 12333 about, right? But hey, man, I was like, they're like, wait a minute, this real? And then, they've got a very tight relationship with law enforcement. And then my supervisor actually at the agency got an email being like, please tell Nick to stop trying to, work for a private nonprofit.
You never cross the streams, man.
Yeah, right? So I was like, okay, can't do that. Started looking around for there's got to be somebody doing this work. Started looking around, and what I saw was a lot of what I call rogue vigilante cowboyism, right? Like, we know how to kick doors, so what we're going to go do is kick doors. I'm like, cool. So if you do that without a badge and a gun, that's called felony kidnapping.
Yeah, you'll be the one who goes to jail.
Yeah, I'm not really interested in that. There was a lot of guys doing the whole, like, we're going to go be a door kicker overseas and rescue kids from brothels and stuff. It's like, well, that's a fundamental failure to understand how human trafficking works overseas, because I've actually been studying this. Anybody who knows me will tell you I'm one of the biggest nerds on the planet. I've been studying this. I talked to Siddharth Kara, who is he's a professor at both Berkeley and Harvard, arguably one of the foremost subject matter experts on the economics of human trafficking. People are interested in this issue. I highly recommend they read his book. And so I understood what was going on. And what I noticed was that most of the efforts to fight human trafficking was happening overseas, because human trafficking doesn't happen in the United States of America, or does it?
Sure, it doesn't.
Yeah. And so then I started diving into that specific part of the problem. And what I found was that, yeah, human trafficking happens in the United States of America. It happens at scale. I mean, we're like literally, do you have a lot of kids in your demographic who listen to this? I assume
Unlikely.
not. Yeah. So
spoiler alert, parents.
Yeah.
From here on out, let's not have this on while your kids are in the car.
Yeah. Thank you. So what we're talking about when we say human trafficking in the United States is we're talking about commercial industrialized rape of primarily children. That's what we're talking about.
Okay.
So how can you learn that and study that and understand that at an academic level? Have all the pieces, right? We got all the pieces to build this race car that fights human trafficking. It's all there. We're really good at this. How can you know all of that and not do something, right? As William Wilberforce said, you know, you can look away, but you can never again say you did not know.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well then I guess that's what I'm gonna go do. And so,
where do you find all the information when you're studying this? Obviously, you were talking about that professor, but I mean, is there obviously there's law enforcement databases. What's the best resource that you use to educate yourself about this?
Professors.
Really?
Orlando Patterson and Siddharth Kara, both at Harvard.
Where did they get their information about it?
Orlando Patterson is arguably one of the foremost subject matter experts on slavery, like the history of it, all of that. Because we say human trafficking, but ultimately that's just a very cushy word for slavery.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. And so he really understands that well, because I mean his full-time job at an Ivy League university is to teach courses on it and study it. So Siddharth Kara, the same way. Full-time job at 2 Ivy League universities is to teach courses and study this issue. So you really have to get into academic papers, right? I mean, you're using Google Scholar a lot to find this stuff. There's very, very few books that I think are truly worth reading on the human trafficking issue. Mandatory reading at DeliverFund is you have to read Siddharth Kara's book. Everybody, I don't care if you're an EA or you're the top fundraiser or you're an analyst, you got to read Siddharth Kara's book, which is called Sex Trafficking: The Economics of Human Trafficking. And then you have to read this book by Moses Naim called Illicit. And Illicit really explains how the whole underground economy all works together. All things you know from your work, right? I mean, we know that if you want to find the bomb builder, you find the guy who makes the documents, right? I mean, yeah. we all know this stuff. But keep in mind, the average law enforcement officer doesn't know this. There's no training course to become a human trafficking detective. There is no specialization here, right?
You're talking modern day that still doesn't exist.
Modern day that does exist now because we created it. This is what we do with our donor funding: is we equip, train, and advise law enforcement and commercial entities on the fight against human trafficking, and we focus specifically on the human trafficker. And this was the other epiphany that I had, was that the majority of the funding that we were spending in this country on the fight against human trafficking was actually happening at the victim level, which is important. We shouldn't stop that.
Yeah.
But the victim restoration process, average of 7 years, $65,000 a year in expenditures. I mean, it's not scalable. So why are we continually playing cleanup instead of going after the actual person who's creating the problem, right? You cannot have a human trafficking victim if you do not have a human trafficker. It's the common denominator in the equation. You remove the human trafficker and the whole equation falls apart. And that was really the epiphany that was like, okay, got to go after human traffickers. So I looked at joining Department of Homeland Security, and let's just say that I managed to somehow become the absolute best human trafficking detective the world has ever seen. Okay, still one guy. And at this point, I've learned enough about government bureaucracies that I know, wait a minute, that grass is actually not even green. It's They gave me green colored glasses.
It's actually
to
a
put
dirt
on.
lot.
Yeah, it's the same color of desert brown, right?
Yeah.
So that's when I was like, okay, how do I do this? Well, we know a thing or two about FID, equip, train, and advise. The agency's darn good at that, right? SOCOM and JSOC communities are really good at that. And we know how to do that with freaking Libyans who don't like us. We don't like them. We have absolutely nothing in common. We don't speak each other's language. If you find somebody with a 6th grade education, like congratulations, you won the lottery. That person's now the commander of thousands of people, right? So if we can be successful in those environments with the terrorism issue, and let's keep in mind that a lot of, again, one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. Mm-hmm. Anybody who's actually been involved in the war on terror truly understands how true that is. Because if you start driving, if you're from another country and you start driving MRAPs through my neighborhood, we're going to go to blows.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. And so you start to understand after a while why people are shooting at you. Doesn't mean you don't shoot back, and it doesn't mean that they don't incur the consequences of that, but you start to understand. Well, the human trafficking issue, it's a binary issue. You're with us or against us. There is no like, well, see, there's a reason they're a human. There's a reason they're enslaving human beings. There's a reason they're...
See, that's what makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Like you hear people justifying, getting very close to justifying exactly that.
And those are evil people who deserve
let's not
to
call
be
them
confronted.
a pedophile. Let's call them a minor attracted person. You
No.
know, try to round the edges.
No.
I don't understand the motivation behind doing those things because I agree with you. That's
I understand the motivation.
That's fucking binary to me.
They're in on it. That's the motivation. Like you think it's okay to abuse children in any way, especially what we're talking about primarily with children here in the United States is sexually abusing these children for your own profit. You're an evil human being that deserves to be put down by the system.
I agree with you completely.
Period.
I have tolerance for adults doing stupid shit and suffering the consequences. I have zero tolerance for people who prey on children.
Absolutely. And ultimately what it comes down to, and I think you'll find this with a lot of soft folks. How many soft guys have you ever met who were bullies?
Not many.
How many of them have you met who got into a lot of fights in high school with bullies?
Quite a few.
Exactly. Right? And what are human traffickers? They're bullies that are preying on weak people. So if we are willing to lay down our lives for, the defense of the country. I mean, when I left the CIA, the GWAT didn't miss Nick, right? It just slotted another guy right in there who's probably did a better job than I did, quite frankly. So
Nick V2.
Yeah. So GWAT didn't miss me. And that's actually most of us. I mean, if we're honest,
Let's be honest, it's all of us.
Yeah. I mean, when we left, the next generation came up and they probably did a better job.
I hope so. That should be the natural evolution.
Yeah, because we created the foundation that allowed them to do a better job, just like the guys in Vietnam created the foundation for us, right? I mean, that's the cycle. But if nobody is really fighting the human trafficking epidemic at scale, well, now it's time to do something, right? And so what I realized was we got all the training. We got all the people with the resources. We have all the proper experts. We have everything. We just need to put it together and fund it. And so that's what we did when we created DeliverFund. And I say we because, it might have been my brainchild and I'm like coming up with logos in my off time and doing this kind of stuff and figuring it all out. But really another SEAL, Jeremy Mayhew, who's actually from Valley originally.
Is he?
Yeah. He lives in Dallas now. But he...
Traitor.
Well, he lives up here in the summer.
Oh,
he has a place in Lakeside, has a place in Olney.
All right, welcome back.
Yeah. So anyway, the organization would not be where it is today without him. My chief of operations is yet another SEAL, Michael Fullylove. He was a human guy at SA2.
Okay.
And then SEAL career, right? 20 plus years. He's running our operations now. And, we just have to put these people together, and we have to fund the mechanism and make it work. And here we are 7 years later, more successful than we ever could have imagined. We're working with over 70 law enforcement agencies. We have a waiting list of law enforcement that wants our help. We have analysts embedded in human trafficking task forces around the country. If you think about any media you've seen around human trafficking in the last 3 months, Operation Reclaim and Rebuild in California, DeliverFund fully embedded in that, DeliverFund actually being referenced in the charging documents for these human traffickers because prosecutors are getting so comfortable with working with us.
Yeah.
We're really just taking the JSOC model and applying it to local law enforcement, right? We've got the Super Bowl operation. We had analysts embedded in both task forces there. The big operation in Missouri that just happened a couple of weeks ago. And so now it's like, wow, we figured this out. We're doing it at scale. Primarily what we do is software related, and people don't realize that.
Really?
Yeah. So, where's your targeting data come from on the CT side? If you had zero, like, all right, clean slate, what's the first thing those targeting officers are doing? Getting online.
Yeah.
Right. And if you can find targeting data online in freaking rock farmer land, Afghanistan, you're probably going to find some in the United States of America.
The land of Cat 5.
Yeah. So it was just a matter of actually paying attention to it and putting the resources behind it and figuring it out.
Is this shit happening in plain sight?
Plain sight.
Obscured.
You could pull the websites up on your phone. You probably don't know where to go.
I was going to say it's probably obscured by the volume of internet data and activity.
Start looking for it on your phone. You'll find it within 5 minutes.
I don't want to because I feel like you'll send me a text and be like, "Hey, dickhead, you just popped up on." No,
there is a portion of that.
Yeah, there's some websites that I'm going to go ahead and not browse to.
Yeah,
not interested.
There's about 32 websites here in the United States. Most of them are actually not actually headquartered here in the United States. They're headquartered in friendly jurisdictions overseas. To those website operators, I say, when you leave the protection of the United States, so do we.
Yeah,
so
fair.
What's very interesting is they leave the United States thinking that they're protecting themselves, and all they're doing is opening themselves up to things that we couldn't do otherwise.
Yeah.
And our partners overseas can do a whole lot more to those sites otherwise. So, but just focusing here in the United States, there's about 32 of them that are relevant. There's actually hundreds of them, but ultimately it's where's the source data, right? Like where's the originating source? It only comes down to about 32 websites, and we are all over those websites like white on rice. We know everything they do, everything they post up. And people talk about like, well, why can you talk about what you do at DeliverFund? Well, why can you drop flyers in a village before you hit it, right? Everything that we do is completely above board, legally blessed. Prosecutors love us, right? We actually help their cases. We don't hurt their cases.
Yeah.
And we do it all without ever leaving our keyboards, right? This is not, I like to say, in fact, we have a t-shirt on our website that has this kind of rendering of Al Pacino, but instead of holding an M4 with a M203 on it, he's holding the keyboard and it says shooters with computers. Because that's what we are now. You know, that's the weapon. And I would even say, even overseas in the counterterrorism fight, right? Keyboard is the weapon. And so
it really is. You have to have good intel and good information before you, actions on target, you train your entire lifetime for
right.
that. You have to know what target and what door to go through to actually have an impact.
Exactly. And that's what we do is we are that targeting cell for human traffickers for the United States. But then we ran into another problem, right? So we started, so in my naivete, I decided that I'm just going to start handing target packages to law enforcement. They're going to love me for it. And then instead they were like, who are you? How did you get this information? No. Leave, right? So, okay, time to pivot, figure that out.
Yep.
So, so we had a couple of really good law enforcement officers who took the chance on us, a couple of Homeland Security agents who took the chance on us and started working with us. And then next thing you know, it just started spreading like wildfire. And we were getting calls from nowhere, Indiana, Nebraska, and Alaska, and Miami, and all these folks helping us out. So I decided that. So what I'd done is I'd dumped my retirement and I'd sold all my guns and my bike, and that was my seed round.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, I got to start raising some money. I got to figure this out. There's really no for-profit model for helping law enforcement, because you could go to Flathead County Sheriff right now and say, hey, I'll teach you everything you need to know. Here's the invoice. He's going to say, yeah, I have no bucket of money to pay that. And even if they do have the budget, it might be, the whole government's bucket of money thing, right? So it might be focused on gangs or drugs or terrorism, but it's not. There is no human trafficking.
Yeah, allocated because of some stupid 3-digit code on there, so therefore it can't be used for that type of stuff. Right.
So that's really where we decided, okay, it's got to be a nonprofit. Let's go raise some money and let's start doing this. And so that's what we did. And not only has it worked really well, but once we figured out that nobody was actually building the cyber tools, right? I mean, so, China Lake might build some tools for JSOC because they want one. Well, there is nothing like that for law enforcement. So we started building software tools and really we're about a 50-50 company between operational support and software. Right, and actually building the software. Well, then we realized that a lot of times law enforcement we'll give them the target package and they trust us, but now they don't necessarily know what to do with it because they didn't get that training, right? And it's nothing against law enforcement officers. In fact, when you look at what law enforcement does in this country with as little resources that they have to do it,
it's very impressive.
Super impressive. And you look at all the training that a CIA case officer goes through, or a GB guy or a GRS guy or something like that, right? And now you look at what training does a detective get? Very little, and they're essentially doing the same mission, right? In a less dangerous place, but essentially the same mission. So then we started training them, and we developed the Counter Human Trafficking Intelligence Operations course. So we put on 4 of those a year. We bring in about 20 law enforcement officers from jurisdictions all over the country into Dallas. Pre-COVID, it was into Dallas.
Now it's a computer screen near you.
Yeah, now it's a computer screen near you for a couple hours over a couple of weeks. But once life returns back to
normal,
we'll be bringing law enforcement officers back to our headquarters in Dallas and putting those classes back on. So we started doing that piece. Then we found that, and this actually might be something you don't know. Do you know how in our world, right? So in the counterterrorism world, CTC was the central brain of all things terrorism, right? So it doesn't matter who you are, law enforcement, military, Joe on the street, all things terrorism flows through there. Well, there's no equivalent of that for human trafficking in the United States for local law enforcement. So local law enforcement officers only have the contact of other law enforcement officers if they happen to see them at a conference or a training or something like that. If the Flathead County Sheriff wants to get a hold of a sheriff in some county in Nebraska that he doesn't know, he goes through the website and the front desk operator just like everybody else.
Really?
Yeah. That's a problem. When you talk about a highly, highly transitory black market economy that is selling what are illicit commodities, right? Human trafficking victims within a black market economy. So imagine trying to fight the war on terror, except for various FOBs aren't allowed to communicate to each other.
And no Blue Force trackers, so you don't even know where everybody is.
Yeah, no nothing.
Wow.
Real problem.
That's unacceptable in 2021, given the digital assets and resources that are available.
Yeah, so we built a program called PATH, Platform for the Analysis and Targeting of Human Traffickers. And what that does is there's currently over 70 law enforcement agencies on it, everywhere from the feds to local county sheriffs. And what that does is it connects human trafficking cases nationally and in some cases internationally, but we don't focus international. We just focus here in the United States. Really think the last thing the world needs is more Americans running overseas telling them what to do for their problems. Like,
I agree.
Let's clean up our own yard first,
Yeah.
and then export the way to do that. And so here nationally, within PATH, Platform for the Analysis and Targeting of Human Traffickers, a bunch of military guys, we got to have an acronym.
Yep.
It's got.
I would have made it like COCK though, or something like that. Computer something.
Computer Operations Countering Kids Being Hurt.
Computer Operations Countering Kids. COCK.
There you go. See, this is why.
This is why we can't have nice things,
This
people.
is why we can't have nice things, and why we need adult supervision. Taking us back to the beginning of the podcast. So anyway, it's got an AI backbone, and what it does is if you put in a phone number, say, that's associated with a human trafficker, it's running a case that you're investigating, but now that human trafficker skips town, he's out of your jurisdiction, not your town, not your problem, right? And he moves to the neighboring city. And now I'm a human trafficking detective, and I take notice of that, and I put in the phone number and the information I get into the system. The system then says, hey, there's already a detective from this location who is interested in this case. Here's our contact information. Why don't you two chat? So it puts it all together. It also really helps solidify federal cases. Some states you want a state charge, Texas and Montana, right? Northern Command and Southern Command. You want a state charge because it's life in prison.
Is it?
Yeah.
Should be gas chamber.
At the federal level, it is minimum mandatory sentence of 15 years. You will get more for money laundering than you will get for human trafficking and a federal charge. So call your congressmen and senators.
Yeah, that's unacceptable.
Completely unacceptable. And so what this allows prosecutors to do is say, okay, wait a minute, Detective so-and-so in Nebraska had a case against, or was starting to open an investigation into this guy, and so was Detective so-and-so in Casper, Wyoming, and so was Detective so-and-so in Denver, and so was Detective so-and-so in LA. Well, that sure looks like this guy's traveling across the country. Well, one, it allows us to get predictive, because then we can say, okay, where is he, right? He's following an artery. Yep. Where is that trafficker most likely to end up? And I say he, but there's a lot of human traffickers that are actually females. Women who are trafficking other women. Some of those traffickers, not all, but some of those traffickers were human trafficking victims who essentially started to help the trafficker run the trafficking business to get favorable treatment. And then psychologically, they have just completely gone over to the other side. And so when I say he, when I'm referring to human traffickers, it's just because that's the majority, but make no mistake, there are women who are human traffickers. But what this system allows allows our analysts to do is say, well, they're in Indiana right now. Oh, and look, they just posted an ad in Detroit. They're obviously they're headed to Detroit. Let's let law enforcement know that these folks are entering their AO.
So when you say they're traveling, are they taking the victims with them? Is this like a mobile roadshow we're talking about here?
Oh yeah, because if there's no federal agency to deal with this, and once it's not in a local law enforcement's jurisdiction, it's not their problem anymore. Wouldn't you want to move about every 3 to 7 days?
I mean, what does that look like? Are we talking? I mean, they're not buying Greyhound tickets for these people. I mean, what? Oh, they are.
Oh yeah, plane tickets, Greyhound tickets. Sometimes sending them by themselves. We had a case in the Southwest where we're pretty sure it was a human trafficking victim. So oftentimes people confuse human trafficking and prostitution to very, very different things, right? A prostitute, for whatever reason, is making a choice, is providing a service, and getting to keep the proceeds of that labor, right? I got a lot of opinions about that, but that is not my fight.
Yeah.
However, human trafficking is somebody who's being enslaved. The type of slave labor they're being forced to perform, primarily here in the United States of America, is commercial sex in nature. So you can see how they look the same, but they're obviously not anywhere near it. And the other thing that gets confused with human trafficking is human smuggling, which is also chosen, right? I live in Guatemala. I don't like the way that this is happening. I want to get my family out of there. I hire somebody to get me across the border. That's human smuggling. Now, once I get here to the United States, I exist outside the system, so I am now vulnerable to human trafficking. But one is not the other. Make sense?
It does make sense. if they're moving people via plane and, Greyhound bus, wouldn't that give them the opportunity to, I don't know, not get on the airplane or not get onto the bus?
So human trafficking victim shows up in the Southwest United States in large operation that law enforcement is running. One of our analysts is embedded in the human trafficking unit in this city. And for this operation, human trafficking victim shows up, and our analyst has a full dossier on this human trafficking victim. There's no trafficker anywhere to be found. I'm like, maybe we got it wrong. Start talking to the girl. Detectives start laying out all the evidence they have. Basically, they're trying to convince her that they know that she's a victim and that she's not going to be arrested, and that if she cooperates, they'll help. And finally, she breaks down crying, and she says, "I can't help you because he has my kid." So,
and there lies the crux.
Yep, law enforcement runs the phones, and sure enough, all kinds of text messages going back and forth about this trafficker is going to hurt her baby if she doesn't make $1,000 a day.
So let's go back a step in this. Lay out for me how that situation would even develop. How would they select that woman? How, with the child, how would they get possession of the child? Like, what at a broad level? Obviously, I'm sure every case is unique in its own way, but the actual foundation and framework of it, like, what does it generally look like?
So it all starts with fraud, usually, right? It's so theoretically, this can happen to any girl or young boy, any person who's kind of outside the system. But once you start adding lower socioeconomic status, you take away a positive male role model, especially for females. You start taking away the infrastructure of society. What do they have? Nothing really. So human trafficker comes along and starts showering them with gifts. We had one human trafficking victim who was super impressed because the trafficker took her to Sonic. Right? I mean, this isn't
the burger place?
The burger place, like the drive up, right? And he had a 15-year-old Lincoln town car, and she thought that was pretty high class, right? So he comes along, starts showering her with gifts, starts paying attention to her, starts trying to fill, quite frankly, that God-sized hole in her heart. And so next thing you know, she's hanging out with him, and then he says, can't come pick you up after work. She's working at a fast food restaurant. Can't come pick you up after work. But I'm sending a friend to pick you up. One of my friend's wives. Okay, no problem. She gets in the car, and she just participated in her own kidnapping. The friend's wife was a human trafficker, and her husband was a human trafficker. And the boy that she thought she'd been dating had about 7 or 8 other girls on the line because he was a recruiter for a human trafficker. Kind of hard to recruit a 16-year-old girl when you're a 37-year-old man. And so they get her in the house. Again, parents, if you're listening to this in the car, you need to shut it off right now. They get her in the house. The trafficker's brother is there, beat her brutally, rape her over a period of days in what they call a seasoning process, stick her in a dog crate, and start force feeding her narcotics.
And this is probably standard?
This is standard procedure.
Okay.
There are literally books about this, which is one of the things that blew me away when I started looking into this. Is there are, we call it pimping, but make no mistake, there is no such thing as a good pimp. If you consider yourself a pimp, please give me a call at 505-715-6472. Right? Like we're gonna talk, and my organization is gonna make you our hobby, because there is no such thing as a good pimp, right? That's not a thing. Pimps are human traffickers, full stop. And we have multiple human traffickers, ex-human traffickers, who actually are on our payroll, who are infiltrated into all these various closed, Facebook groups and things like that, and are actually, it's kind of cleansing for their soul. They've done their time in prison, and it's cleansing for their soul to help us find the people that they used to be. So this is pretty standard practice. They write books from prison. This all goes back to what's called the Memphis model of pimping, back to the 1960s. I mean, this is standard operating procedure.
I would imagine there's multiple people in multiple dog crates in that, or in every stage of that along the way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then where does it go from there?
So it doesn't always go to that level.
Yeah.
It's what they call the most what they call the rogue girls. And keep in mind, we talk about this in generalities, right? We say that, well, there's a human trafficker, we say he, but we know that there's some she's. Human trafficking victims, we predominantly say she, but I mean, we've been involved in quite a few cases where it was young boys. Right. In one case, it was a young boy who was targeted over a period of months through a gaming console. My legal counsel says I'm not allowed to say which one, but you could make a guess, and you'd probably 50% chance of being right. Targeted through a gaming console. Human trafficker was, and it's called grooming. It's a grooming process, and grooming this boy to, let his guard down. Next thing you know, where do you live? And then this human trafficker was a truck driver, and he showed up in this kid's neighborhood and texted him on the gaming console and just said, "Hey, I'm up the street with my dad. Come hang out." So the kid leaves his house. Kid disappears. They find his cell phone in the front yard, and he was 3 states over. Luckily, one of our senior analysts, Kara Smith, former Air Force SIGINTer turned NSA detailee turned DOJ analyst. I mean, she's one of those types, right? You know the target
exactly
type.
what you're talking about.
Yeah, she's an Instagram called it's at Kara the Huntress. She's pretty awesome. She tracked down the human trafficker and the kid. It was just a matter of hours, and a SWAT team kicked in their door and rescued the kid about a day later.
What happens to a man like that in prison? Do they receive? I'm hoping that they receive a particular type of welcome.
I don't know.
Because I've heard pedophiles don't get treated so hot in prison.
Yeah. So when we talk about
there's a difference, obviously, here.
Yeah. Well, yes and no.
Probably a blending of the two worlds, but
the overlap on the Venn diagram is darn near a circle. Because you have, pedophiles are creating, child pornography and things like that, and obviously, touching children as well and doing horrible things. But the human trafficking piece, really, when we talk about human trafficking, what we're talking about is somebody who is being controlled through force, fraud, or coercion, and being forced to perform labor for the economic benefit of somebody else. Now, there are people like Orlando Patterson, again, super expert in all things slavery at Harvard, and he will say that in order to have a true human trafficking situation, you need transport, but the law disagrees with him. The law just says that as long as you meet those three things, or somebody's under the age of 18, right? They're a minor. Mm-hmm. So anything that happens to a minor especially in the commercial sex world can be charged as human trafficking, but predominantly, and prosecutors really like those cases. Because were they a minor? Yes. Did you check these blocks? Yes. Go to jail, right? Super easy. Prosecutors like them. And we need the laws to be that easy when it comes to the protection of children. However, girl's 18 in a day. Now she's got to testify. So you're going to take this human trafficking victim and to put it into perspective, this conversation went deep pretty quick. Now you know why the nickname I always had was Buzzkill. So what women who have had substance abuse issues and they have psych issues. Women who have been sexually assaulted, psych issues. Women who have been physically just assaulted and beat up, psych issues. Women who've been emotionally abused, psych issues. Women who've been with eating disorders, abused. Human trafficking victims have all of those things wrapped into one, happening at an industrial scale. So where are their brains? We talk about PTSD in the veteran community. Yeah. This is next level. Yeah. We have 3 human trafficking victims on payroll who work for us, help us hunt down human traffickers, help us, get the services that other human trafficking victims need. And I mean, they are amazing people. when you talk to them, they're bright, they're articulate, they've got a really good sense of people. They are very quick studies. They learn very fast. And you look at what they had to overcome to get to that point. It's truly amazing. So these human trafficking victims, when they go through all of this, right? And now let's say that human trafficking victim who went through all those horrific experiences is now going to have to testify against the person who did it to her 3 months after, she's finally out.
Yeah.
How's that going to go?
Well.
You're going to put her up against an Ivy League trained defense attorney, right? Which attorneys who defend human traffickers, like, you can also feel free to text me at the number I gave earlier in this podcast. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Right. I mean, there's just a certain amount of evil. Like, what won't you do? And there's this whole philosophical argument that, well, everybody deserves, protection under the law. No, that's just not true.
Yeah, I was going to say I disagree with that also.
So what we do is we help law enforcement go after the money laundering angle. We help them go after all different types of crimes because if you're committing human trafficking, like, there's a wake of crimes behind you.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's probably not a one item jam.
No. And human trafficking is also not one of those things where you're like, hey man, I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like, you don't get it. Like, you happen to fall into some human trafficking. It doesn't happen.
What does the execution of that human trafficking look like? So you're saying they'll travel, which makes sense. They, using the internet, I'm assuming they're posting. I mean, what are they posting?
So everything from agricultural help, right, in the migrant worker community, to not all migrant workers are trafficked people, but a small subset are, where some rancher is working with a labor broker to bring labor to his ranch or to his farm to, say, pick produce. And what he sees is he paid a labor broker, and all these people showed up and started doing the thing he paid them to do. So he just assumes that those people are being paid. But the reality is the labor broker is keeping all the money and having 27 of them live in a 3-room mobile home with 1 bathroom. Right. I mean, so that's kind of the execution on the labor side. The illicit massage parlor industry, like, everybody, and especially veterans listen to this, like, got to tell you guys, like, if you are participating in basically the rub maps culture, and most people don't know what that means, but I guarantee you some of your listeners just understood. These are all things I didn't know. Yeah. But there's a couple of your listeners who just broke out into a cold sweat by me saying that. They're participating in that culture. If you've done it more than 3 times, there's 100% chance you have fed money into the human trafficking cycle. Right. So things that, especially sailors overseas off ships. I mean, many people listening to this know what I'm talking about. It's not what people think, right? It's not prostitution. It's human trafficking. Like, these women are, the major majority of them are being forced to do this. And now, are there sex workers? Absolutely. Are there women who are making $500,000 a year, selling their company with older men? Absolutely. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about slavery. And so the execution of it is really just like any other business model, right? They're going to the place they can get the most profit, and they're trying to mitigate their risk. And in this case, the risk is law enforcement. So, why don't they, we get all kinds of questions like, well, why don't they just tell a John or, one of the customers that they're being trafficked when the trafficker has their baby in another city, right? I mean,
what are you going to say? Nothing.
Yeah, they're not going to say anything. And not only that, but traffickers will send their buddies in to go pose as law enforcement officers to see if the girl will flip. And then when she does to their buddy, they beat him senseless. And then so now a real cop comes into the room and they're like, hey, we think you're a human trafficking victim. And she's like, oh, I've seen this movie before.
Yeah,
nope,
for sure.
Not doing that. So it's very, very difficult for the victims to get the help they need. And when you think about where their minds have to go just to survive, like psychologically, where their minds have to go. I mean, we all know dudes who in the war maybe took things a little too far on target, because that's where their minds had to go to survive. And we don't judge them for that at all. In fact, quite frankly, if you're a politician listening to this, those men need immunity, or don't ask them to go do those things. But a human trafficking victim, where does her mind have to go in order to survive, right? It's a pretty dark place.
Yeah.
And so, and now you want her to do the rational thing?
It's a lot to ask.
It's a lot to ask of anybody. And so that's why we have to have a system that rallies around those victims and protects them from not only their trafficker, but then being further exploited by the system.
What would you say the scale or size is of human trafficking in the United States?
You know, that is such a good question that we don't have a great answer to. It's an illicit commodity. That's like saying how many terrorists are there in the world?
7.
Yeah, right. You clearly have some information. I have some people who want to talk to you.
Exactly somewhere near 7.
Yeah. So we don't know, but we can make estimates, right? We can make educated guesses. And so there's really 2 metrics I like people to focus on here. One comes from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Phenomenal organization. Our country owes them a debt of gratitude for what they're doing, around the missing kids issues, child exploitation issues in general. They did a study where they found that their tips coming in from law enforcement went up by 846% in a 5-year period.
So rapid and expansive growth.
Yeah. And when you overlay that expansion with the adoption of the smartphone, of pocket or computers in your pocket, all right, with basically unlimited access to the internet, what you find is a ripe opportunity for many businesses to scale up, human trafficking being one of them. So take that metric and now look at just trafficked children. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, 1 in 4 missing kids will end up in the human trafficking cycle. They estimate there's about 100,000 children who go missing in this country every year. So conservative estimates are, and we're not even talking about adults. We're not talking about anybody over the age of 18 here. Conservative estimates are that the victim population under 18 grows by about 25,000 children a year.
What is the average age of somebody being trafficked?
Also a lot of speculation on that. Some will say 12 to 14. We don't think that is accurate. We think 14 to 16 is a more accurate number.
And probably skews more towards the female side?
97% female.
So those major operations you were talking about that happened recently, how much of a dent does it make in the infrastructure and the ability for people to do stuff like that?
Makes a significant dent, right? It's like saying, well, what would happen if we took the counterterrorism center out of the fight against human trafficking? The whole thing would, the fight against terrorism, the whole thing would blow up again. So for us, each one of those operations is really important. So we passed hundreds of target packages on human traffickers at the Super Bowl, right? The Super Bowl is a market opportunity for human traffickers.
So they probably are, because it moves around every year too, right? So they probably come there as well. Yeah, they come there. A different type of Super Bowl.
Yeah, so the human traffickers are there, like they coordinate, they work together, right? And this is what's great is they're giving each other kind of best practices and lessons learned.
That's excellent,
right? Online, and we're fully integrated into those chat rooms and the various forums that they're communicating on, and closed Facebook groups where they think they're letting in somebody. It's just
Facebook is a skiff. I don't know if you know this. It's a private group or room.
Yeah, nobody can get in,
and they don't keep the information.
Never.
It's like a disappearing.
Yeah.
People are idiots with their electronic devices, and I'm really appreciative of that when we're talking about people like this.
Yeah, we have one of our analysts actually has a ongoing text thread, like cell phone to cell phone, with a active human trafficker, a pretty smart one too, actually. And she worked for a period of years to kind of social engineer her way in there, and she's actually chatting with this guy on, like, as she's trying to become a a human trafficker, and he's giving her best practices. And oh yeah, it's awesome. I was at an event in the Arizona Attorney General's office, had a detective there, and he said working with DeliverFund makes fighting human trafficking like shooting fish in a barrel. So the problem, though, on top of all that, is if I were to make every human trafficker in the country glow neon green right now, one, it's going to surprise you.
Yeah.
Some of the people. Two, law enforcement wouldn't be able to do anything about more than about 5% of it.
Why?
They don't have the manpower.
Oh, shit.
They don't have the prosecutors. Right? Prosecutors are something, when we talk about that thin blue line that separates, I hate to use the word wolves and sheepdogs because I think it's completely overplayed, and anybody who's truly been to war understands that it's actually the wolves who win wars.
Yeah, it's the sheep that are actually the most dangerous.
Yeah. But the truly evil people, that thin blue line that helps us all sleep at night and makes it so we don't have to have bars over our windows, that is the law enforcement community. So it's law enforcement officers on the street, but it's also prosecutors. Prosecutors are an incredibly important part of the law enforcement system. And you think there's not enough cops. Oh, there's
probably a fraction of
prosecutors. And so there's not enough prosecutors. There's not enough law enforcement officers. Unfortunately, the political system has set it up in such a way that prosecutors are incentivized to be risk adverse because it can potentially hurt their career. I mean, they can get fired for losing cases, right? I mean, imagine if a SEAL team commander would get fired if a SEAL didn't come home. He's going to make very different decisions.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and we've even seen some of that.
Yeah.
And so that's the situation our prosecutors are in. And so if they got to choose between taking a risk on a human trafficking case that they think they've only got about a 60% probability of closing, or feeding their families, they're going to feed their families, right? Because there's a reason the DOJ, as an example, has, I believe it's an 86% success rate in prosecutions, right?
They pick the winners.
They pick the winners, and they do not take risks on the prosecution side. So there's not enough prosecutors, there's not enough law enforcement officers, right? And then we get into like mandates and all of that. So what we are doing is we're taking a very holistic approach. We may have paid attention to a fertilizer manufacturer or two overseas. We do the same thing in the commercial enterprises here. So we work with companies that, because of NDAs, I can't say who they are, but they're big, household recognizable names that are doing the right thing and making it so that the human traffickers can't use their platform. Because when a human trafficker goes on a business trip, he books a ticket, he uses Uber, he uses Airbnb, he uses, keyless check-in at hotels, he rents a car from a rental car company. I mean, he does all the same things you and I do.
Yeah.
So we work with these companies to actually deny the territory of polite civilization and the business, the things that we all need to do business. We deny that territory to the human trafficker. That's what reduces it at scale, right? So it's a holistic approach, right? You gotta have sticks, but then you also have to just make it so it's just complicated. And again, I'm not some super genius. I mean, this sounds a whole lot like the way we fight the war on terror.
Yeah.
Right? We do a lot of anti-money laundering work. We do a lot of work with banks to help them kick human traffickers out of their bank. And there's a process. How do they
generally try to clean that money?
Same way.
Probably narcotics is probably very similar.
Yeah, so this is where off air I'll kind of tell you some trade secrets that you're gonna love because it's so.
Sorry, listeners.
Yeah, it's so it's just so good. But human traffickers don't want a defense, or they don't want a human trafficking charge. They want some type of charge, lower level charge. Yeah, and so we can get them to admit to things that they don't understand. Actually, we'll get them more years than human trafficking. We can't. We train law enforcement on how to do that, and then prosecutors love it because by defending themselves against the human trafficking charge, they are admitting to a charge that's way easier for them to prosecute, that they can actually get that they have a very high probability of being able to convict on, which is why most of our cases actually just go to a plea.
Has there been a trafficker in an occupation that just shocked you, or at a level inside? You know what I mean? Like, you would never think that somebody who does fill in the blank at fill in the blank, like they would be immune from this. And
Airline pilot.
really,
Yeah. Airline pilot, white dude, super, super kind, the kind of person that, you would never, ever imagine. There's media on it. I don't want to say what company, because they're actually trying to, fight human
probably
trafficking.
not have it be the front page.
Yeah, but it does tend to affect the stock price.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an airline pilot. It's absolutely, absolutely shocking.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is. I don't think I would have guessed that one.
No, I mean, we sure as heck didn't.
Yeah.
We sure as heck didn't.
What would you? I mean, some people see things, and other people are oblivious to things, to include myself. Like, I often will miss social cues. But I could.
You too?
Yeah, but I could almost always tell you how to murder everybody in a room.
Sure.
So I have some blind spots.
Career hazard.
Yeah, but there are other people who I think pick up on that type of stuff. And for people who may feel like they are witnessing human trafficking, and what does somebody do who doesn't do what you do? And they think that they are either observing it or have concerns about it.
So in the modern age, if you are witnessing human trafficking, most likely you're a customer. Not always. There have been some really good examples of airline stewardesses who said something because they just got the wrong vibe.
I've read stories about this.
Yeah, there was a hotel manager, I want to actually say here in Montana, in a Motel 6, who called law enforcement because they just knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
But by and large, you're not really going to see human trafficking because, I mean, there's been so many victims that when we talk to them, they say that usually the hotels are in on it, or a lot of times the hotels are in on it.
The hotels are probably the people working at the hotel.
Yeah, it's the seedy hotels. You know exactly which ones.
Yeah.
And the locks are actually flipped on the room. So you need a code or you need a key or whatever to get out of the room. Fuck. So yeah, I mean this is so again you see a lock flipped on a hotel. If you're staying in one of those hotels, definitely say something. But
who do you say something to?
Law enforcement. That's the thing that everybody asks. Like, oh, should we call you DeliverFund? I'm like, no, you should call law enforcement. And in fact, with very, very few exceptions, we don't take tips from the public. We used to, and then we got flooded with narcotics and all kinds of other things. Literally people calling because they saw an interracial couple at the mall and thought that, well, clearly somebody's being trafficked. I mean, it was ridiculous. And so we only work to support law enforcement right now. Those tips need to go to law enforcement. So if you're truly that concerned, take the time, dial 911. Preferably if that's a last resort. Like, let's not tie up the emergency line. But if you think you're witnessing human trafficking and you don't know what else to do, just dial 911 and tell the dispatcher what it is that you think you're seeing. It'll be recorded. And then that will be a tip for the local law enforcement. So there is the National Human Trafficking Hotline. There are kind of DC level things, but ultimately what you have to ask yourself is who's going to take action, because ultimately that's what we need in the fight against human trafficking. We need action. Yeah. We need people taking action in form of education and outreach. We need people donating to organizations like DeliverFund that are doing this work. We need people calling their law enforcement saying, hey, I think I see some human trafficking. And the other piece of action that people need to be doing is holding their politicians accountable. So when you have a governor or an attorney general or somebody who says that they take human trafficking seriously, the very next question anybody should ask is, show me the budget line item that funds my county sheriff's fight against human trafficking. And if that doesn't exist, then you're all talk, no action, and either you're going to start taking action or we will replace you in the next election cycle and find somebody who will.
But you just said politician, all talk, no action.
Good point. I'm sorry, I was redundant there, wasn't I?
I mean, not that there are any of those.
There are some,
and there are some people who live up to every ounce of what the people that elected them would hope for.
Yeah, our past Attorney General Tim Fox really tried to take this issue seriously, but he was starting from zero.
Yeah.
Okay, so the new Attorney General for Knudsen, I believe is his name.
I think so. For
Montana. Okay, let's see what you do.
Yeah.
Right? You were given a foundation to build upon. Let's see what you do. And if the fight against human trafficking is not better resourced, I'm talking like, show me the arrests. So anytime a law enforcement department says that, oh yeah, we take human trafficking very seriously, it's like, cool, let's see the arrest records. Because if there's no arrest records, then either you don't have a human trafficking problem or you're not actually taking it seriously. But many times that doesn't fall on the law enforcement officers, it falls on the politicians, right?
Yeah.
A chief of police is a soldier who does what the mayor and the city council tells him to. A county sheriff is a soldier who's really doing what, I forget what the name of the body is that oversees the county sheriff, but really doing what it is they say. And what are the politicians doing? They're doing what their constituency demands. So if you're a voter, I mean, this is the beauty of our country. If we're honestly serious about this fight against human trafficking, and we honestly want to see it go away, then we're going to take action in all of its various sorts. Not everybody needs to quit their cool job at the CIA and start a nonprofit and freaking Forrest Gump their way around the fight against human trafficking and get it figured out, right? There's other things people can do, like calling politicians and donating and providing services and resources to human trafficking victims.
Do you think it can be won, the fight against human trafficking, or is it going to be a finger in the dam model?
It can be reduced to a significantly manageable level, right? It's like saying that, can you win the fight against terrorism? Well, is that really the goal? Because we all know that
I don't think it's possible.
We're drone strikes away from creating more terrorists, right?
The kinetic solution to terrorism will in and of itself create more terrorists.
Right. So we all know that, but what we have to ask is, what is the ultimate goal? So the goal in the fight against terrorism is to keep terrorism off of U.S. soil. I mean, at the end of the day, that's it. That's what we do. The goal in the fight against human trafficking is to absolutely end it. However, here's the cool thing. I talked about the proliferation of human trafficking based on internet technologies. So the thing that got us here is the thing that's going to get us out of here, right? And so we are using the human traffickers' tools against them.
As you should.
As we should, right?
Yep.
So that's what we're doing, and as we do that, we will continue to reduce it. So what we are pressing for is, when we reach a certain amount of funding, our models show that we're going to have an 80% reduction in online commercial sex trafficking in the United States in a 7-year period.
That's substantial.
Mm-hmm.
I assume.
Because it's a single point of failure.
Oh,
right?
For sure.
You take away the trafficker's ability
to traffic,
to use. You take away the convenience of the modern business economy. You take that away from the human trafficker, and we roll them right back to the 1970s. Which is why that was a level of problem that law enforcement actually could handle.
That makes sense. I would assume that human trafficking is occurring right now in all 50 states.
Absolutely.
Are there any states that are head and shoulders above others?
Anytime you have so it's like any illicit commodity. Anytime you have a confluence of lines of communication, you're going to have an increase in human trafficking, right? Human trafficking is a high volume business model, which requires, right, there's no online human trafficking. I mean, there kind of is, but for the most part, it is a person to person transaction that is required. So you're going to have more in cities like Houston and Dallas and LA than you're going to have in Billings, Montana. Now, that said, we actually had a human trafficker leave Houston selling his girls all the way to Billings, Montana. I mean, this guy like had tattoos on his face. He kind of stands out a little bit up here.
Yeah.
And selling girls all the way. And we've seen communications between traffickers talking really about rural America, because 80% of the United States is still rural.
Yeah.
And those law enforcement departments don't have the resources to deal with the human trafficking issue. They don't even know what it is. And many times the county sheriff just kicks them out of their county and sends them to go
Kick the can down the road philosophy.
Yeah, sends them to go be somebody else's jurisdictional problem. But that's where our software comes in, because as long as they input the data, and even if they don't input the data, at that point we at least have the advertising data of advertising that victim in that town.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter, because eventually they'll end up in one of our nets.
Just out of personal curiosity, for Montana, what's the most common expression of human trafficking?
Meth-related, what appears to be meth-related prostitution.
As in they're
prostituting themselves. No, they're prostituting themselves to pay for meth. But really what it is that's what people think is happening, but it's actually a human trafficker who's giving them meth to keep them under control, and then, pimping them out. That, and you do see the CD massage parlors. Billings actually just just passed some legislation about these illicit massage parlors, and these illicit massage parlors. What you think is happening in there is exactly what is happening in there. And what's really interesting is the community. Yeah, go figure, right? Yeah. The people who participate in that underworld, they communicate online, and they are pretty brazen about the way that they communicate, because they know that law enforcement doesn't have the bandwidth to do anything about it. So we, over this period of doing this work, we have managed to amass the largest human trafficking database in existence, the cleanest human trafficking database in existence. We have also amassed a database of every single illicit massage parlor where we have like cut and dry evidence that they are an illicit massage parlor in the entire country. So now we're actually in the process of unraveling the various businesses and shell companies and whatnot that own them. Some of these,
it's almost like you've done this before.
Yeah, right. Well, and what's funny is we actually see within the massage parlor industry, we see a little bit of connection to foreign intelligence agencies that are actually using them to launder their money for their espionage work that they're doing over here. So
that actually kind of makes sense.
Absolutely, it does.
Yeah.
So it's all so interconnected and interrelated. And when am I going to be able to get a JTTF to pay attention? A very well-funded. So for your listeners, a joint terrorism task force.
Yep.
Yeah. Am I going to be able to get them to pay attention to an illicit massage parlor? No. I'm not. But can I get them to pay attention to the fact that illicit massage parlor is being used as a funding mechanism for terrorism?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
You use that word and they're like, excuse me, where is this massage parlor?
Exactly. So part of what we do as a strategy is we tie the problem that we're concerned about and that we care about to problems that other people care about and are concerned about.
By, with, and through.
Exactly.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Exactly.
How close are you guys at the DeliverFund, guys and gals, to reaching that fundraising goal?
Oh, we're a ways away. So that fundraising goal is $15 million annually.
Hopefully you're like 14.5, right?
We crossed 2.3 in 2019, and then COVID. Right. So last year we actually dropped down to 1.7.
Yeah.
So we found a bunch of efficiencies, and we're very blessed. Many companies didn't even survive, and we survived. So DeliverFund is continuing to grow. But yeah, that's really where we're at. And what's cool is, of that 15 million, we're not actually looking to raise all of that. We're actually going to earn through some various entities that we're doing business with around the counter trafficking issue. We'll be earning about half of that, right? So we really only need to expand our fundraising by about $5 million a year to really start putting this down. And we're currently at about 44 people involved in DeliverFund. And that's a mix of part-time contractors, full-time contractors, and full-time employees. Most of our full-time employees are analysts this is all they do all day, every day.
It's the information that's going to make the difference, as
Yeah.
you and I well know, even back to the old GWAT.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're doing when we get to that 15 million part is that expands that up to about 150 people. So essentially 3 people in each state. And that fully funds our ITAC, which is our International Human Trafficking Analysis Center down in Dallas. And what that does is it coordinates, right? It's that coordination cell that coordinates all of the various human trafficking operations around the United States. And then more importantly, when you have some law enforcement officers like, I got a human trafficking victim, what do I do? It's like, no problem. We got somebody to walk you through that, right? So that becomes central for the fight against human trafficking.
Where can people support DeliverFund? How can they, get involved? I suspect there's going to be interest just based off. I mean, I have an interest to help, but I would be in prison for the role I would like to play in this particular operation.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One, if you're a soft guy and you just went and grabbed your rifle out of your safe and you're lubing up and you're like, hey, you know what? Making sure this thing works.
We're talking about rifle barrels.
Yeah, we're talking about rifle lube. That's a good point. I am talking to a SEAL. I gotta be careful with that.
We take it out of context.
I like that this is the first place you went.
Well, it's like, you're not trying to squeeze through a tight place. So yeah, that's not the answer, because you'll go to fucking prison.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but it's not a scalable answer. So if that is your role, right, and you're that soft guy, and you're like, and you didn't become a computer nerd like myself, then what you can do is you can donate, and you can get the word out there, and you can get other folks to donate. I mean, you look when the soft community decides to rally around things, and this is something, since I got a little bit of a soapbox here, I'm going to jump on it.
Do it. We'll stack shit underneath it.
When you ask the public, what do you special operator? What do they think? 22 a day. You're broken. Thank you for your service, but you can't do anything for me now, right? I mean, and this is the issue. And we have, as a community, done a darn good job, too good of a job, at pointing out the whole PTSD issues and stuff that our community relates to the soft operators listening to this, because I assume there's quite a few. Crawling in that bottle, both pills and alcohol, is not going to solve that problem. The reason that many are in that position, and I'm very lucky, right? 30 combat deployments, all my fingers, all my toes. I got a bunch of pain, just like every other soft operator. I am insanely blessed to be able to say this, and have not had to wrestle with the demons that many of those guys have, right? So I'm not saying this from a place of judgment. I'm saying this from a place of help. You need a mission. That's the reason why we have so many people who are having problems, because literally the public has no idea how many bombs didn't go off because of their work, right? They have no idea how many times some catastrophe was avoided because of the work of some special operators or intelligence community personnel or law enforcement operating behind the scenes. So one of my missions is to make this the new mission that special operations and intelligence personnel are known for. Not, you're going to be broken, we'll give you a middle management job at the Home Depot, because we support our veterans. Like, that doesn't fix that guy's problem, right? What fixed that guy's problem is a righteous mission
In front of him.
Yes.
Another thing that I see with our community is, a ship does not sail on yesterday's wind.
No.
But they look in the rear view mirror far too long after leaving that career.
And I think that's why, so for people listening, QAnon is not real. Hillary Clinton is not trafficking children and eating their faces in the basement. Like, that's not real. That's not happening. I get into these arguments with our former soft brethren because they're like, oh no, you just don't understand. I'm like, really?
No, I do understand.
Because we actually do this every single day, and we're the largest organization in the country that does this every single day. Like DeliverFund's fingers touch more human trafficking investigations than any other organization, with the exception of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and they do $60 million a year just from the federal government. So like, don't tell me these weird conspiracy theories, because we actually happen to know for a fact, because we're actually in the trenches doing the work, not just reading things online.
Yeah.
So,
which to many is the same thing.
Yeah, unfortunately. But the reason why I think we've seen an explosion of these soft guys believing these weird conspiracy theories.
So you're seeing it too?
Oh yeah.
I am shocked by the number
know
of
better.
people.
Like the complete lack of critical thinking that is happening here
disturbing
is appalling.
to me. It's disturbing to me. Like I used to work with these people. Like, hey man,
yeah,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, like you're.
I just got off a Zoom call with this guy, and it's going to be the national emergency. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? No,
you're
it's
talking
not.
about your brethren who are still serving, are like what? Turning a blind eye to child trafficking happening in the federal. I mean, it's just not real. Are there corrupt people? Yes. Are there bad people in all kinds of various places? Yes. But this is not some kind of like deep state conspiracy. The reason, though, that I think that we're seeing what were otherwise like really solid dudes falling on this is because it's become a new mission. It's become something they can sink their teeth into. It's become an evil that they can fight. And
see, I never thought that. I just thought they hid their dum-dumness really well.
Did they though? I mean, because I look at it and I'm like, some of these guys who believe this stuff, am I really that much smarter than them? No.
Oh, I'm not. I am probably the bluntest object in the shed.
So why are they doing this? It's because you're talking about men that God designed to pursue a righteous mission, which is the direct confrontation of evil. So that's what they need. So go get a badge and a gun. I don't care if you're in your 40s. You're going to do better than a lot of those law enforcement officers were doing in their 20s. Go get a badge and a gun, or make this your new mission, right? So beat this drum the same way that, you've got organizations that are beating the drum on the, on the PTSD issue, right? And that has advanced that mission. The same way that we have organizations, Hunter something, that's really beating the drum on the wonderful smoke we all inhaled for decades that is causing all kinds of
the burn pits.
Yeah, that's what.
Is it Hunter 7?
I think that might be it, right?
Or it might not be.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't either. There's a chance that I am correct and an equal chance that I am not.
But there's organizations that are pointing out and like pursuing some like righteous missions. Like, go do that. And if you don't know, like if this is your mission, if this is your calling, this is the thing that resonates with you, like help us out. Everything from one, we've had plenty of rogue vigilantes, guys that I knew, guys that I served with, were like, I want to join DeliverFund. We're going to go kick some doors. I'm like, no, we're not.
Dude, where's my Punisher t-shirt?
Yeah. And then I'm like, hey man, like, if you want to be involved, that's awesome. Here's a bunch of courses. Here's a bunch of books I need you to read. I'm even happy to pay for the books. Once you figure out how to use that keyboard and you get away from hunting and pecking, then we can actually bring you in and you can actually be helpful, and we'll actually embed you. Once you prove yourself, we'll embed you in real world law enforcement operations. No, you're not going to get a gun, but you're going to go tell them what door to kick. And you're going to save a lot of lives. Screw that. I'm not going to go do that. I'm going to go start my own organization. And the next thing you know,
such a myopic approach.
Yeah. And it just doesn't work. So like, that's what we need. We need the soft community to take this issue just as seriously as we've taken everything else. Because if we were fighting terrorism overseas and we have our own children being terrorized on our own soil, like, what was it all for?
Yeah, missing the forest for the trees.
Yeah. So let's solve this problem, and to employers and non-soft personnel listening, the soft communities are the most capable communities writ large that we have right now. I mean, how many soft guys have gone to, Ivy League schools and gotten, Ivy League graduate degrees since they've left? How many become doctors and surgeons and, PhD researchers? And I mean, it's pretty phenomenal. And we are capable of so much. We're capable of solving problems overseas, but we're also capable of solving this problem over here. We just have to decide as an organization, and I mean a collective organization of SEALs and PJs and combat controllers and MARSOC or whatever they're calling themselves, today, Green Berets and Rangers, and say, okay, like this is a common thing that we can all come together on. And we can all fight this. And if you truly want to fight human trafficking, computer skills are the way that it's done. If you don't like that, then going out and hosting a fundraiser, and it doesn't just have to be for an organization like DeliverFund, right? There's organizations that restore these victims that I don't have enough letters behind my name to even be helpful on that side. But those organizations need funding as well. We have incredible people who have capacity. We just got to get it in front of them to let them know that there's a solution to this problem. And I think the solution to this problem is the same solution to the fight against terrorism, which is intelligence support. Intelligence support and essentially FID missions for local law enforcement through the equip, train, and advise model.
Yeah. So I don't even know if we got to it. The best way to donate.
Oh, yeah. So sorry.
I want to make sure we at least get that in there.
Yeah. So you can go to deliverfund.org/donate. You can donate directly through Facebook. If you want cool Crushing Evil t-shirts and hats, we've got an online store. What else? You can find us on all the platforms as at DeliverFund. We're the only one. You can follow me, which is essentially just an extension of the professional stuff, at DeliverFund Nic. And that's really, really where we're at. And we make announcements about large fundraisers we're doing. July 14th here in the Valley. We're doing one, which is kind of our big fundraiser that we do every year, is actually up here in Whitefish.
I have ideas. We should do the running of the bulls like in Spain, but with cows down the middle of Whitefish.
That would be awesome.
I don't know how
right at the height at tourist season.
Yes, and I don't know how that would tie into fundraising, but for whatever reason, I've been thinking about that for the last few days.
I like it. We'll figure it out. We're nothing if not resourceful, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's that's really the best way to support us is go online and hit that donate button. And if you know somebody with more capacity, get them to go online and hit that donate button. And if it's if it's worth a flight to go sit down and talk to somebody, we're happy to do that as well. But let's as a soft community be known for let's be known for solving this problem, right? So that our children can be like, oh yeah, my dad was part of the human trafficking, horrific, used to happen years ago, and our kids will get to learn about it in history books because we solved it.
That would be amazing. Dude, thank you for your time. This was enlightening for me. I thought I had an idea of what human trafficking was, a slightly different perspective.
Yeah, this was the PG version for sure.
Yeah, that's okay.
But again, we don't want people to just not listen at all.
Correct.
So, yeah, it's important, but this is important work too. I mean, getting folks like me on. We've got a lot of folks. So anybody else who has a podcast wants to get the word out. I mean, this is how it happens. We went from I went from basically being a spy, right, which is again not what people think. Went from being a spy with a network of a bunch of government employees who have no money to now an organization of over 40 people that is working with over 70 law enforcement agencies, right, and a budget in the millions. I mean, that happened because of things like this right here. So thank you.
You're welcome. Let's do a round 2 again sometime in the future. We can talk about the progress.
For sure.
Cool.
Happy to do it.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you again to Duke Cannon for supporting this episode of the podcast. You can pick up a stick of Duke Cannon Dry Ice Cooling Antiperspirant, and it will feel as refreshing as jumping naked into the frigid lakes of Montana, without the risk of frostbite to your undercarriage. Visit DukeCannon.com and use promo code ClearedHot2021 for 10% off your next order. Free shipping with orders over $20. A curated selection of Duke Cannon products are also available at your local Target.
Understand the west bank of the river? That's A firm, west bank, and give me help. He'll give it to me in the grove. Okay, one's in from the north. I've got the west bank of the river. Two's going to give it to you in the grove. Roger, give
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to tune in, whether you're listening on an audio-only platform or you're watching on YouTube. I appreciate that you take the time every week to tune in. People ask me a lot, what can they do to help me spread the word? And the answer is actually embedded in the question. The biggest thing you guys can do to help me, if you enjoy the podcast and you think it would be helpful to others, is subscribe and share it with other people. And if you have the time, go on to Apple Podcasts and leave me a rating and a review. If you think the podcast sucks, tell me it sucks and leave a 0-star review or the lowest stars possible. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion, you can go to clearedhotpodcast.com. And there is a contact me button right there, which will land in my inbox. And the last thing, if people are interested in helping out, what you can do is fly the old flag. And by that, I don't mean an actual flag, because I don't have any of those. I'm talking about t-shirts or sweatshirts or hats, whatever it may be. Again, clearedhotpodcast.com. Click on the shop tab, and hopefully something in there looks like it would be an item you would like to wear around town. And then you can tell people what it is when they ask you. But that is it. The biggest thing I can say is thank you. I truly appreciate it. And until next time, see you.